Part 43. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ryu Siahua. Chapter 433. Sumei also calmed down. She knew that she didn't feel much disgust or boredom when she saw this face that looked like Yesijin in the past. It was just because Yesijin no longer threatened her, and the grudges of the past had disappeared. What's more, Qinyanan is the most beloved little princess of the Qin family. It is more convenient to be close to the Qin family when working in the mainland. The third wife in the past had a good relationship with Qinyanan. But now, Sunangzio understood. Now looking at Qinyanan's appearance, the lingering feeling of boredom in her heart could not be suppressed again. After all, at first I saw that Yesijin's eyebrows were not eyebrows, and her nose was not a nose. The reason was that the little fox Miiza was clever and gentle in the outside world, but secretly she was very scheming. She was always secretly thinking of ways to make Yechinayu and Sumei not get along well. Later, I thought that Yesijin was dead, and I didn't feel much when I saw a face that looked like Yesijin. After all, the reason for the threat and boredom disappeared. Now this threat and boredom have appeared again, and it feels natural to look at this face. Disgusted. This Qinyanan looks the same as Yesijin back then, with the same scheming and artificial attitude. Relying on his favor, she pretends to be just his dear sister or junior, but in fact, she doesn't have the same thoughts in her heart. If the guess is correct, Qinyanan now knows that Lu Chang'an's girlfriend is in Nuan. On the surface, he will not directly do anything extreme to make Lu Chang'an disgusted, but the kind of petty actions that offend in Nuan, or secretly compete with in Nuan. It's definitely endless. Sunangzio calmed down, raised the corners of her mouth slightly, and smiled between her eyebrows. I'm here to meet an old friend, what else do I need to say in a shameless way? But you, I want to come to him, and it's not your turn to say anything. Who are you to make irresponsible remarks? As far as I know, his current girlfriend is in Nuan. Holding her brings peace and keeping her warm. When you are by his side, do you want him to hold her? Or do you want to? Where's the company? This old goblin is very sharp-tongued. Qinyanan's expression changed slightly. Do you want him to embrace her, or do you want her to be with you? Isn't this an insinuation that Qinyanan wants to replace in Nuan? Grandma of the Zhu family, this is not a question of what I want from him, but that he has recognized me as his sister. Why can't I, as a sister, say something about those women who have ulterior motives and are like snakes and scorpions? Lest she come and sting me. Stung my brother, Qinyanan sneered. Even though Sumei and Yechinayu had a romantic story back then, the marriage was broken, and it violated his taboo. Even Sunangzio can't bear the word old. She is obviously just a 14-year-old girl now, but the little fox in front of her can be more delicate. When Sumei was furious, she suddenly became suspicious. The anger in her expression subsided, and she raised her eyebrows and looked at Qinyanan carefully. The Qinyanan in front of her was indeed different in stature from Yesijin, and her temperament was more arrogant, but the important point was that Lu Chang'an actually recognized her as his sister. Younger sister? In literary, film and television works from ancient times to the present, sisters are particularly annoying. Apart from asking their brothers for dowry, being jealous of their brother and sister-in-law's affection, narrowly trying to break up their brother and sister-in-law, and collaborating with their vicious mother-in-law, what else can they do? This is not the point is that Lu Chang'an has lost his mind and gone crazy. He accepts a junior who is several generations behind as his sister? If it were like before, this sister didn't know his age, it would be reasonable for him to start a life as her elder brother, such as Yechinayu and Yesijin. But now he clearly recognized Qinyanan as his sister when Qinyanan knew his identity. If there were no other reasons, it would be difficult to explain. Qinyanan is Qin Peng's great-granddaughter. When Qin Peng was still alive, Lu Chang'an recognized Yesijin and Qin Peng's great-granddaughter as his sister. No matter how unbridled he was and how he broke away from ordinary human ethics, it was not his style at all. In this case, why did Qin Yan'an become the younger sister? Sunangzio's eyes became more suspicious and gloomy. She circled Qin Yan'an half a circle before stopping, staring straight into Qin Yan'an's eyes, and shouted sharply, "Yes, Ijin." Qin Yan'an's eyes suddenly became gentle and calm. He placed his hands in front of his lower abdomen, relaxed his shoulders, and even the straight posture of his waist and hips became softer. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, revealing a shallow smile. "Sure enough, it's you." Sunangzio took 2 steps back, opened her mouth slightly, a playful and absurd smile bloomed on her cold face, but it was like a gust of wind blowing on the cold winter plain, making the dead grass stems tremble. "Do you think that me being Yesijin can reduce your frustration a lot? After all, you are competing with an old rival from 100 years ago, so you feel it is more acceptable." Qin Yan'an laughed. "Of course I am not Yesijin, I don't mean to be jealous with you, I just ask you to accept the reality. Things are different now than 100 years ago. There are other women around him, and it's not your turn to be in Lungian." Only then did Sunangzio come to her senses. Concern caused chaos, and she was actually played by a little girl. "You are very sharp-tongued. Don't think that since you are the little princess of the Qin family, I won't dare to criticize you." Sunangzio quickly collected her thoughts and looked at Qin Yan'an coldly. "I don't dare to promote myself. What can't you do? Stop talking nonsense. What do you want to say when you invited me here today?" Qin Yan'an raised his head and glanced at the sycamore tree with more and more yellow leaves, and his eyes fell on Sunangzio's face that was very similar to the eldest lady of the Su family in historical data. "I want to know, today, are you still holding him? Should it only be your thoughts?" Sunangzio sneered and did not answer Qin Yan'an's question. "He has lived for so long, and he has never belonged to a certain woman. You should know this. There has probably never been a woman who has been as tireless as you. He is no longer Yechinayu, and his current life does not belong to you. You shouldn't get involved." Qin Yan'an sighed softly. "Since you did something that he couldn't accept, we have nothing to do with each other from now on, and we are both happy. Now you just live your own life, why bother him?" "Life? I just wanted Yesijin and Qin Peng to marry as soon as possible, but by mistake, Yechinayu got into Yesijin's bed, so that your great-grandmother got what she wanted." "Didn't Yesijin marry Qin Peng later? To say that she is a flirtatious person. I really can't bear it. Your great-grandmother is the same." Sumei sneered. "A woman's art of keeping a husband is always unscrupulous. Do you think that the women in the 3 palaces and 6th courtyard are all as close as sisters? It's just weird. The villain is causing trouble, and the times are not good for me." Of course, her villain causing trouble was not referring to herself. It was probably because her plan at the time was sabotaged, which caused the accidental error. However, this matter was something Qin Yan'an had never heard from Lu Chang'an. It was probably hard for him to say it. After all, he had always regarded Yesijin as his younger sister, and Sumei had violated his taboo by doing such a thing. No wonder he didn't want to pay attention to Sumei, but also found it difficult to face Yesijin. "I chose to leave temporarily during the latter stages of the war. It turns out there is such a reason." Qin Yan'an thought of Yesijin's obsession with Yechinayu that she felt when she touched the coffin. It turned out that he was not just his brother. "You don't know? It seems that there are still many things he hasn't told you." Sunangzio looked at Qin Yan'an's trembling eyes and absent-minded face, and sneered. "I think, he recognized you as his sister, and he didn't tell you either." Reason? Although Qin Yan'an did not admit that she was Yesijin, this did not dispel Sunangzio's suspicion, because apart from Qin Peng, only Sunangzio in the world knew best how much he valued his sister. As long as he did not forget Yesijin, he would not. "I will randomly find someone to replace my sister identity. Unless Qin Yan'an is actually Yesijin." We just have our own opinions. Qin Yanan was a little panicked. She didn't expect that he didn't tell her about another relationship between him and Ye Saijin. It was indeed as Sunangzio said. There might be something behind it that she didn't know that he had concealed. Come down. At first, I was immersed in his arms, moved by his longing for Ye Saijin, and felt that I could be his sister's substitute to comfort him for the pain of never being able to see Ye Saijin. That didn't matter, so naturally I accepted his statement. Each of us has his own opinion. Thinking about it now, I'm afraid it's not that simple. He was such a proud and introverted person, and his longing for Ye Saijin was deeply buried in his heart. How could he casually find someone to replace Ye Saijin as his sister? Everyone has their own discussions. Sunangzio repeated the word, not hiding her hostility and high emotions. You are Ye Saijin. Just ask him directly. You made an appointment with me to meet here today, and he agreed. Right? Because he knows that I can see it, and he wants me to tell you directly that you are Ye Saijin. If I were Ye Saijin, why didn't he tell me himself? Qin Yanan retreated and leaned against the sycamore tree. The rough trunk pressed against her back, making her back feel a slight chill. Because you lost Ye Saijin's memory, you thought you were just Qin Yanan, and you were rejecting your former identity. He cared about your emotions, so he chose to hide the truth and didn't tell you, but he wanted to tell you after all. Yes, so let me do this. I may be able to see it, or I may not be able to see it. I may tell you if I see it, or I may not tell you. This is for him, but it's up to God. Sunangzio stretched out her finger and hooked Qin Yanan's chin. Look at this face, he should be worried all the time when he looks at it. What evidence do you have? You are just telling the truth. I will ask him for details. Qin Yanan held her chest, took a deep breath, and forced herself to calm down. She could not mess up in front of Sunangzio. I'm looking forward to it. Sunangzio completely restored her usual lazy and cold temperament. It's actually very simple. I can help you find the evidence. How to find it? Qin Yanan hesitated. If you were Ye Saijin, you would have formed a specific reverse transcribed DNA because of your relationship with him. Although there is currently no evidence that directly shows that its existence is related to physical variation, it is more like a mark, but this mark can explain the problem. I don't believe you. I should choose to ask him directly. Qin Yanan didn't want to be used by Sunangzio. Who knew what she had planned behind doing this? Whatever you want. Sunangzio also looked lackluster. If I were Ye Saijin, how do you want to deal with me? Qin Yanan is currently unable to calmly think about how to deal with it if she is really Ye Saijin, but in comparison, the woman in front of her is more vigilant and careful. Object. External threats always require more attention than one's own inner emotions. Qin Yanan is not the kind of woman who ignores everything when her emotions come up. She just wants to vent and loses her mind regardless of reality. Why do you think I will deal with you? Sunangzio asked with interest. This is your usual style. There are so many little vixens around him now, who am I going to deal with? Sunangzio dismissed them. I just need to catch him. Qin Yanan also sneered, you are too confident. I really don't know where you got the confidence. Lu Chang'an is within Nuan now, and there is no chance for others. This is my business. Sunangzio frowned slightly. Qin Yanan was silent. At this moment, she felt that Sunangzio had taken several steps back. She couldn't help but turn her head and found that the door of the utility room where Lu Chang'an lived had opened at some time. A girl wearing a moon-white gown was sitting in the door. Put his hands on his thighs, and sat upright, looking at himself and Sunangzio. Who are you? After Qin Yanan noticed Sunangzio's retreat, she took a few steps back and leaned against the sycamore tree. Then she stared at the girl in the moon-white gown with trembling eyes. Shang Guandandan? Qin Yanan had seen Shang Guandandan's true face. That night in the Gongjiaja mountain cave, the coffin was opened, and Qin Yanan learned that Lu Chang'an was actually related to the Empress Dowager who had lived for 2,000 years. But at that time, Shang Guandandan wore a crown and fine clothes, elegant and noble, and his temperament was still very different from his current appearance. Shang Guandandan, who was sitting in the utility room at this moment, did not have the power and elegance of the imperial queen mother. She was more like a little princess who had taken off her gorgeous clothes in the palace and was enjoying her leisure time. Qin Yinan was a little confused about Su Nangxiu's appearance. Su Nangxiu, a ruthless and arrogant woman, seemed to be extremely afraid of Shang Guandandan at this moment. Although Shang Guandandan is very mysterious, even living in a coffin, and has a terrifying background of mysticism, but when you really look at her, the childish face of the beautiful girl clearly makes people feel harmless. On the surface, they look about the same age, and both have beautiful faces that still have childishness. Qin Yinan feels that Shang Guandandan is much more pleasing to the eye than Su Nangxiu. You don't feel it. Su Nangxiu looked at Qin Yinan with a calm expression and no shocking reaction in surprise. What does it feel like? Qin Yinan was confused. Is Su Nangxiu afraid of ghosts? Maybe Shang Guandandan, with his long hair and moon-white gown sitting in the dark room, looks a bit like a ghost? It shouldn't be, since she was sitting in Lu Chang'an's original room. Even if it was a female ghost, shouldn't Su Nangxiu rush over and ask if the female ghost wanted to seduce Lu Chang'an? This is Su Nangxiu's style. Su Nangxiu leaned against the sycamore tree and seemed to have difficulty breathing. She stared nervously at the girl who was sitting quietly. I feel, she wants to eat me. No way, Qin Yinan smiled absurdly. She was different from Su Nangxiu. Now that she saw Shang Guandandan, she felt very willing to get close to him. She waved to Shang Guandandan and called out tentatively. A voice, Dan Dan. Shang Guandandan nodded, and then he stopped sitting motionless. He responded with a little doubt, why don't you continue the palace fight? We are not fighting in the palace, we are just talking. Qin Yinan brushed away the long hair from her face with a slight embarrassment. She always felt embarrassed to witness the scene of a fight with a girl with such clear eyes and such elegant and demure temperament. Oh, he's not the emperor anymore. You guys are calling this a quarrel between otakus? Shang Guandandan took out his cell phone and took a look at it twice. He nodded with certainty and turned his eyes away, without any intention of consulting the two of them. You, who are you? Unlike Qin Yinan, who was completely calm, there was already some cold sweat on Su Nangxiu's forehead. I am Lu Chang'an's mother. Shang Guandandan introduced himself very formally, and then as if he remembered something, he turned back to the coffin in the house and said, Coffin, she is not delicious, you can't eat her. After Shang Guandandan finished speaking, Su Nangxiu felt relaxed all over, and the feeling as if she was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered disappeared. To be precise, her vitality and blood were being devoured and bitten by some kind of force in the void, which made her horrified and frightened. You are Lu Chang'an's mother. Su Nangxiu was still surprised. Over the years, she had never felt so suppressed, as if the birds and animals had encountered their natural enemies. Qin Yinan had the experience of hearing Shang Guandandan call Lu Chang'an's son that night, and she knew some of the details of the smile. However, Su Nangxiu's understanding of mom was obviously just the ordinary understanding of ordinary people, and Qin Yinan had no intention of talking too much. Leaving Su Nangxiu with a confused look on her face, at a loss as to how to face Shangwen's indifferent attitude. I've listened to you talking for so long, and I've understood some things. Jealousy should be stopped in moderation, especially for you. Shang Guandandan pointed at Su Nangxiu, with a majestic expression that could not be resisted. If you want to kill your sister, I will take it. You. Seeing Su Nangxiu's expression, Qin Yinan finally understood why Lu Chang'an arranged their meeting under the sycamore tree. Sorry, I just finished writing it. Today there is a chapter about the Silver Alliance update, and there will be a big chapter like this later. Please give me a monthly pass. There is a fan activity in the book review area. The rewards are very generous and easy to get. I hope everyone will actively participate. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 434. Two flowers bloom, one on each side. In the room of the farmhouse, Miao Yingying and Bai Hui were in the same room. Miao Yingying stayed in the room to take care of Bai Hui. She watched Bai Hui come out of the bathroom and picked up the hairdryer to dry Bai Hui's hair. You scared me to death. You were so good at dancing on the boat, Miao Yingying said with lingering fear. Fortunately, you are in the same boat with Lu Chang'an. If you were in the same boat with me, you would be doomed. I've just learned a new dance. I haven't recorded a video yet. I want to see the reaction. If Lu Chang'an thinks it's good, it must feel good. Bai Hui's face turned a little pale. I asked her before getting on the boat. I fell into the water. I didn't know whether he would save me or not. Only when he said he would save me did I dare to jump. Lu Chang'an doesn't seem to be very good at water. I remember that time when he went to rescue Zhao Wuqiang, he almost got himself involved, Miao Yingying recalled. So I have to thank him. Bai Hui thought of a word, blushed slightly, but bit her lip and looked a little angry. You know, I fell into the water, and when I first started struggling to call for help, I saw he smiled at me. Oh my God, isn't it so scary? It feels like a murderer getting his wish. Otherwise, how could anyone see someone else drowning and still laugh? Miao Yingying imagined that scene and was horrified. Said. Bai Hui nodded. I was a little frightened by his smile. Later, when he was rescued, my heart tightened and relaxed, and I passed out. Gao Dui and I hurriedly rode over and saw you being turned over and over in his hand like a salted fish. However, the rescue effect was pretty good and you woke up immediately. Miao Yingying breathed a sigh of relief. Why don't you wear a life jacket? There isn't one on that ship, and he won't save anyone until he dies, so I don't care about it anymore. Bah, you are putting your life in his hands. How can I think so much? Who would have thought that I would fall into the water? Hey, they thought we were stupid to begin with, and you fell into the water again. Now Lu Chang'an and Gao Dui might be laughing at us, Miao Yingying said gloomily. Are you still complaining about me? Bai Hui scratched his hair. You are used to being bullied by them, right? He, but he saved your life. Logically speaking, your relationship has made great progress. Miao Yingying giggled. We are good friends to begin with. He and Gao Dui are different. Don't mess with anything, it's good now. You keep dragging me into an ambiguous relationship with him. It's quite embarrassing, Bai Hui said. Miao Yingying clicked. Miao Yingying disagreed. She was Bai Hui's best friend, not a nuance. Of course she supported whatever Bai Hui liked. How could she have so much reason and a neutral and objective attitude to look at the problem? You go out first, I'll change my clothes. Bai Hui and Miao Yingying brought clothes to play with, and there were clothes they could change into if they fell into the water. Why are you going out? I noticed that you have a lot of problems with the eldest lady now. Miao Yingying pulled off the bath towel that Bai Hui was wearing. I'm going to die. Bai Hui quickly raised his hand to block the situation, his cheeks turned red. I haven't seen you for a long time, oh my God. Miao Yingying threw herself on the bed and rolled around in her arms. I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to be obsessed with you. Why don't I have such a figure? Bai Hui ignored her and went to take out the lotion and put it on first. Girls start to grow old after they are 16 years old, and they must take good care of their delicate skin and tender flesh. It's not that it's for men. Enjoyment, just doing this kind of thing has a sense of ritual and accomplishment in itself, and it is a necessary procedure to satisfy your exquisite girl life. When Bai Hui and Miao Yingying went downstairs, it was already dark. Gao Dui was lighting a fire next to the big stove in the yard. There was a particularly large pot on the big stove, which felt like people could take a bath in it. Where is Lu Chang'an? Miao Yingying asked Bai Hui. He went to the lake to summon Bai Hui's soul, Gao Dui said with admiration. Chang'an is really good, he can do everything. What's so great about this? He also engages in feudal superstition. Miao Yingying felt that many of Lu Chang'an's actions were simply unbelievable. Also, before the college entrance examination, I went to worship the Bodhisattva. Aren't you very disdainful? Lu Chang'an did it? The matter of summoning spirits is even more ridiculous. Your grades are just like that. No matter how much you pray to God or Buddha, you might as well let me teach you 2 more questions. This is the right way. You leave 2 powerful classmates without asking, and you don't know how much you have to deal with asking for 1 candidate bodhisattva. Are you stupid? If you were as good looking as an Nuan, bodhisattvas might even look at you, but you don't have that. I'll beat you to death, Gao Dui, I'll beat you to death. Miao Yingying picked up the fire stick on the ground and struck at Gao Dui, who still planned to reason with her. Bai Hui smiled and shook his head, ignoring the 2 people fighting and walking towards the lake. In the evening of October, it got dark earlier than before, and the quiet lake looked particularly deep and quiet. Bai Hui saw Lu Chang'an holding a sieve with some rice in it, and throwing a handful of rice into the lake. Shouted, "Eastern rice grains, Western rice grains, Southern rice grains, Northern rice grains, 4 and 5 square meters of rice grains. Bai Hui is back. Please come to the 9 heavens Suanv to pick up the soul boy and send Bai Hui back to the courageous one. After repeating this several times, Lu Chang'an sprinkled the rice into the lake and sang a piece of Chu Yuan's The Soul Calling there. Then he turned around and walked back, and saw Bai Hui standing on the roadside. Uncle Gao came here and heard that you fell into the water. He said that he had to call out your soul for you. Otherwise, the water ghost would grab your soul at night and give you nightmares. I said I would, so I wouldn't bother him. Thank you for your hard work, Lu Chang'an explained. Thank you, Bai Hui smiled. Although she didn't believe in these feudal superstitions, it was a sincere intention after all, but she also understood that if Gao Yuanshan hadn't mentioned this, Lu Chang'an wouldn't have come to help her do this kind of thing. You're welcome. How should I repay the favor of saving my life? It feels like in ancient times, I had to kowtow, kneel down and salute, then worship you as my godfather and sworn brother, etc., and give you a lot of things. From now on, I have to go around giving gifts during every year and festival. Help with farming. The godfather is good, Lu Chang'an nodded, agreeing very much. Bai Hui was just joking, but she didn't expect Lu Chang'an to be serious. It's just a joke. Lu Chang'an would not just treat anyone as a godfather or adopted brother. That's disgusting. Bai Hui patted his cheek. By the way, your phone is damaged by water. Let me buy a new one for you. You're welcome. After all, this is my fault. No, my phone didn't get wet. A waterproof phone. No, why do you think I would be so stupid as to jump into the water to save someone without even taking out my phone? I fell into the water. At that time, you were still thinking that your mobile phone could not get into the water. Of course, I also took off my shirt and pants, leaving a pair of underpants on. After all, I didn't bring a change of clothes. Lu Chang'an, your phone is not flooded, but my brain is flooded. I've known this for a long time. Lu Chang'an smiled happily at Bai Hui. She finally realized the fact that her brain was filled with water. Bai Fen walked back angrily. When she woke up, she was still lying on Lu Chang'an. How could she have noticed at that time why Lu Chang'an was topless? Later, when Miao Yingying helped him go upstairs, he didn't think about it anymore. Now he realized that she fell into the water. Not only did he find it funny, but he also had enough time to take out his phone, take off his clothes, and then come to save her. If an Nuan fell into the water, would he be so virtuous in saving people? Bai Hui pressed her chest and tried hard to remind herself that a correct outlook on life is the sexiest label. If someone saves her, just be grateful. Don't care if he is eager to save others, but his chest, the swelling feeling in front of me really feels like I am going to explode with anger. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Julian Kuiken Rusiahwa. Chapter 435. Bai Hui walked in front. She walked along the field bank by the river. The moist tips of the grass wet her calves and fleshy little feet. She was wearing loose thin cotton trousers, and her twisting and swaying legs seemed to be, the bright moon that Li Bai saw made people couldn't help but chant, the bright moonlight in front of the bed seems to be the frost on the ground. I look up at the bright moon and lower my head to think about my hometown. Women are the hometown of men. This poem fully expresses the poet's touching feelings of longing to return home thousands of miles away. Lu Chang'an didn't stare at the most attractive part of her back, but was just thinking about a question. Bai Hui fell into the water today. If he didn't save her, there should be a high probability that she would not drown and die, and would probably float. After all, once there is too much fat, it will gather together and form the same function as a life jacket, allowing her to float. This also fully explains the evolutionary direction of women before the next great flood. After all, such women have more chances of survival. What are you thinking about? Bai Hui turned around and glanced at Lu Chang'an, and found that even if he was walking behind her, his eyes would not fall on her, but it didn't matter, she often walked behind him, and often what he thought about the most was whether he would fall into a big monkey if he kicked him secretly at this time. I was thinking about the natural evolution of women. Lu Chang'an came back to his senses and said. Let me ask you, if an Nuan fell into the water, would you jump into the water immediately to save her? Bai Hui couldn't help but ask. Why did you curse an Nuan for falling into the water? Lu Chang'an said angrily. Bai Hui gave Lu Chang'an a roll of his eyes. In fact, he asked knowingly. Forget it, he really answered. He was the one who was embarrassed. Back in the yard of the farmhouse, Gao Duai and Miao Yingying were squatting together to light the fire. Both of their faces were covered in ash, and there were even dark fingerprints on their cheeks. Obviously this was the result of two people touching each other. Seeing the fingerprints on their faces, Bai Hui couldn't help but laugh. Why are you boiling such a large pot of water? Bai Hui asked curiously, are you killing pigs? Bai Hui remembers that time when her class came to the farmhouse for a gathering and killed a pig. They had to boil a large pot of water first. Chang'an said he wanted to take a pot bath. Gao Dui didn't understand. Pot bathing is a common bathing custom in the south, but there are relatively few in our county. Pot bathing is more common in Zhangjiagang, Changshu, Jianjian, and Liang. Lu Chang'an said with some nostalgia. In short, it is stewing yourself in an iron pot. Stew yourself in an iron pot, Miao Yingying burst into laughter. You should stew yourself quickly to avoid harming the world. Lu Chang'an tested the water temperature. Generally speaking, ordinary people would sit on a wooden board underneath for fear that the iron pot would burn their skin. Lu Chang'an was not so delicate. He took off his shirt and pants and put on bathing pants underneath. He climbed directly into the pot and lay down. The two girls screamed and turned around quickly. Lu Chang'an, you are simply a gangster, Miao Yingying shouted. He is wearing pants, why are you so pretentious? If you come to my house to play during the busy farming season, the fields and mountains will be full of old and young men wearing only a pair of shorts. Gao Dui added to the fire and said disdainfully. How can it be the same? No one said anything about people wearing bikinis on the beach. He just took off his clothes when he had nothing to do and didn't even say hello. Bai Hui turned around and covered his eyes. He was in the same state when he went into the water to save you. Didn't you jump on him too? Gao Dui couldn't see these girls being so pretentious. Chang'an, are you warm? It's hot and refreshing. Lu Chang'an lay in the pot and squinted his eyes comfortably. This was no less than the best soup. Gao Dui's words can choke someone to death. Who can care about that at this critical moment of falling into the water? Bai Hui's face started to heat up at this moment, and she couldn't help but picture herself throwing herself into his arms while he was shirtless. In fact, Lu Chang'an had a really good figure, and it was the one that made girls heat up when they looked at her. Kind. Miao Yingying had already turned around, glanced at Lu Chang'an lying in the pot, and couldn't help laughing. Lu Chang'an poured some water on it, and Miao Yingying stepped away with a smile, while pulling Bai Hui to look at Lu Chang'an. Bai Hui turned around and saw Lu Chang'an's legs hanging on the edge of the pot, his head resting on the other side. His whole body really looked like a piece of meat being stewed, and he couldn't help but laugh as he hugged Miao Yingying. In the past, only wealthy families could afford to buy a bathing pot. When this family burned the bathing pot, other families could just bring their own firewood and wash it. There was some vulgar custom at that time, that is, a pot of water in the family, the highest status the men washed first, and then it was the women's turn last. The pot of water was already extremely dirty. Later on, there was still a custom of grabbing the first pot of pot baths at home. Now that conditions are better, many families use one pot of water per person, which is more hygienic. Yes, Lu Chang'an explained to these rare and strange fairies. Chang'an is so knowledgeable. If you see you don't understand anything, you will giggle, Gao Dui said with admiration. Gao Dui, you will stew yourself in an iron pot later. Miao Yingying doesn't care whether she bathes in a pot or not. In her opinion, she stews herself in an iron pot. I can't. With my physique, I can't stew in one pot. Gao Dui waved his hand. Chang'an has finished washing. It's your turn. Do you want to wash? Bah, you mean his status is higher than ours? Bai Hui caught the arrogance hidden in Gao Dui's words. I didn't say that, I didn't mean that. Gao Dui looked at Miao Yingying angrily, and Miao Yingying held a black carbon bar in her hand and looked at Gao Dui threateningly. Gao Dui, you have to realize that we are actually in the same class, and we are also graduates of the high school affiliated to Hunan University. Even if there are differences between us, we are still from the same school. Bai Hui was also a little unconvinced. Let's just take it out. Relatives and friends heard that we are from the high school affiliated to Hunan University. Who wouldn't praise us for being awesome? Why do we feel inferior and stupid when we are in front of you? You don't understand this. Gao Dui glanced at the carbon strip in Miao Yingying's hand and said nothing. Say, Miao Yingying threw away the carbon strip. She wanted to see what Gao Dui had to say. The high school affiliated to Hunan University is ranked among the top 3 domestic high schools based on high-quality students. Do you understand high-quality students? Chang'an and I are high-quality students. Students like us are the signature of the affiliated high school because of our existence. The affiliated high school is the top high school, so it can obtain more educational resources and form a virtuous cycle. You are the ordinary students who enjoy this virtuous cycle, and it is precisely because these educational resources can benefit ordinary students, and people like us improve the learning atmosphere and competitive environment, promote the learning of ordinary students, and improve the thinking logic, so that the high school affiliated to Hunan University becomes popular. We do not talk about politically correct things, we realistically face the relationship between people. The gap between everyone, in an organization like the high school affiliated to Hunan University, the gap between everyone is actually quite big. After Gao Dui finished speaking, he stared at Miao Yingying warily to prevent her from messing with his face with the carbon strip again. Doodle. Miao Yingying and Bai Hui looked at each other, still very unconvinced, but Gao Dui's words were reasonable, so the two good friends changed their goals in a tacit understanding, and together they picked up a basin of cold water and poured it into the pot. Anyway, Lu Chang'an and Gao Dui are both short-talking, and retaliating against anyone will not endanger innocent people. Lu Chang'an was just relaxing with his eyes closed when he poured a basin of cold water down. He shuddered and sat up from the pot, staring at Bai Hui and Miao Yingying, who were laughing. Lu Chang'an stood up without hesitation. Bai Hui and Miao Yingying screamed, turned around and planned to run away, but how could they outrun Lu Chang'an? Lu Chang'an grabbed Miao Yingying first and then threw Miao Yingying into the pot. When Bai Hui saw Miao Yingying being thrown into the pot by Lu Chang'an, she screamed and jumped like a drowned rat. She was funny and scared at the same time. She hurriedly twisted her butt and ran upstairs. Her clothes were thin. It's made of cotton. Once dropped into the water, wouldn't it reveal that the whole body is soaked and the skin becomes transparent, turning it into a wet temptation? Run quickly. Bai Hui left Miao Yingying behind and ran to the room to hide without looking back. Gao Duai laughed loudly on the side. Miao Yingying picked up the basin from the pot, took a basin of water and poured it on Gao Duai, immediately drenching Gao Duai. "Why are you pouring it on me?" Gao Duai was stunned for a moment, then picked up a basin of water and was about to pour it on Miao Yingying. "What are you doing?" Gao Yuanshan just came over, grabbed Gao Duai's ear accurately and quickly, and said angrily, "How dare you bully Yingying?" "Dad, no. I didn't." Gao Duai's ears hurt sharply. "Do you want to lift him up by his ears?" Miao Yingying quickly climbed out of the pot, her face flushed. "Uncle Gao, we are joking. It's just, she bullied me." Gao Duai was truly aggrieved. How had he ever bullied Miao Yingying? "We are taking a pot bath, Uncle Gao. Do you want a pot bath?" Lu Chang'an asked enthusiastically. Gao Yuanshan let go of Gao Duai's ears. He had experienced it in the Jiangnan area in the early years. He was a little tempted, but he still smiled and said, "You young people, just have fun, I won't get involved." After saying that, Gao Yuanshan glared at Gao Duai hard, then turned and left. "Let's see if you dare to bully me in the future." Miao Yingying, who had a strong background to support her, became shy. Her tone was also sweet, and she gently tugged on Gao Duai's ear that had been twisted just now. "I want to tell my mom that you look like my dad's first love." Gao Duai thought for a while and said, You are such a pig." Miao Yingying was so angry. Lu Chang'an picked up the big pot, poured out the water, cleaned it up, and said to Miao Yingying, "You can go get a swimsuit and wear it to try the pot bath." Gao Duai can only be smart, understand? Is seduction equal to outsmarting? Miao Yingying opened her mouth. Is this useful to Gao Duai? As soon as this thought came to my mind, my cheeks turned red. I couldn't help but glare at Lu Chang'an fiercely. What kind of sexy idea is this? Lu Chang'an didn't mean to actively pull the red line. He just said it casually and then went to the kitchen to cook. After a while Lu Chang'an was washing vermicelli, he turned around and found Bai Hui secretly standing at the door of the kitchen, watching. "We're even, don't throw me into the pot." Bai Hui stretched out his hand and pointed casually. He couldn't find a pot of the right size, so he pointed to the iron pot on the stove. "What's the tie?" Lu Chang'an couldn't understand. "Go sit in the yard, we'll have dinner soon." Bai Hui squinted her eyes and smiled, holding the door, and quietly walked in. She leaned against the wall and watched Lu Chang'an at work. Girls are always weird. Lu Chang'an took a look at the girl with a homely style that was rarely seen on weekdays, and then continued to do his own thing. Lu Chang'an made beef stewed vermicelli, stir-fried grass carp, boiled free-range chicken with green pepper, and a large pot of tomato and egg soup. After dinner in the evening, Lu Chang'an asked the three of them to play cards first, and then went downstairs to the next yard to ring the doorbell. Li Hongfang knew that there was no point in pretending to be absent. Since Lu Chang'an had come to ring the doorbell, he must know that she was here. After Li Hongfang heard that Su Nangxiu said that she was pretty good looking and had a good figure, she became less worried. What's more, Lu Chang'an seemed to have always been quite gentle, and he didn't treat her in any evil or scary way. "Good evening." Lu Chang'an walked in and said hello to Li Hongfang. "Good evening," Li Hongfang said quickly. "How's your acupuncture point going?" Lu Chang'an asked. Many people are a little taboo about talking about tomb robbing and cave robbing directly, and sometimes they use cave digging instead. It sounds like celebrities and idols have changed jobs. Of course, Li Hongfang did not misunderstand and said quickly, "It's almost done. But there are no documents and classics, so it is of little significance. There is only one bamboo slip, which is the Book of Gao Di, which is an unexpected surprise." The letter of complaint? Did the tomb owner issue it himself, or did he find someone else? Lu Chang'an asked with interest. It was issued by a man named Xiao Aiho for the tomb owner. The wording was extremely majestic. He did not pray for the underworld to provide convenience to the tomb owner, but directly made the tomb owner the king of a certain area in the underworld. This is consistent with the previous archaeological discovery of Gao Di book is completely different. We think that Xiao Aiho may not be a marquis, but a real emperor, in ancient times, except for emperors, who would dare to directly make a king in the underworld, Li Hongfang said with some excitement. Xiao Aiho? It sounds like the villain boss in old-school martial arts novels, a bit old-fashioned. Lu Chang'an nodded. This book of complaint is the name of the road after the death of the ancients. The ancients believed that the underworld, and there is also a title system of 3, 6, or 9 grades in the underworld. People who have a certain status in the underworld and want to inherit their glory and wealth in the underworld will bring them with them. The Book of Gao Di is such a heavenly book that connects yin and yang. Of course, the weight of the Book of Confession written by different people is different. It is true that only the emperor dares to write the Book of Confession to the land to be crowned king in the underworld, and only the identity of the person who wrote it can be confirmed. Only the owner of the tomb dares to be buried with such a book of complaint. Otherwise, if he goes to the underworld to ask for the throne with a book of complaint written by someone who is not qualified to be crowned king, wouldn't he be seeking death? No, he's already dead. Anyway, there's no benefit. It's indeed interesting. Lu Chang'an nodded. Let me see it when you get the chance. If you want to see it, there will definitely be a chance. Li Hongfang nodded meaningfully. No need to disturb me. I just came to say hello. You are busy. Lu Chang'an raised his hand to signal Li Hongfang not to make tea, and stood up to leave. You're looking for me, are you okay? Li Hongfang was stunned for a moment. She knew that it was no accident that she was discovered by Lu Chang'an, but since he found out, wouldn't he interrogate and investigate her? It's okay. Lu Chang'an walked directly to the door and thought for a moment. There used to be bats flying everywhere outside my door, but then all those bats died. Li Hongfang suddenly felt chills running down his spine. Looking at Lu Chang'an's leaving figure, he quickly packed his things and left the farmhouse, being careful not to disturb the movement in the yard next door. Li Hongfang ran far away, and then called Sunangzio to report the news that Lu Chang'an had discovered him. Sunangzio was not surprised that Li Hongfang would be discovered by Lu Chang'an, but she felt the dissatisfied look in Shang Guandandan's eyes and quickly hung up the phone. The way to serve a husband has been clearly stated in the Book of Rights. A woman is headed by Jinwuo. There are 5 husbands in the story. First, if they look at each other with paper and hairpins on weekdays, they will be strict with the monarch and ministers. Second, if they provide food in the wash basin, they will be strict. There is the respect of father and son. The third is to retaliate and act in reverse, which is the way of brothers. The fourth is to follow one's mistakes and become virtuous, which is the meaning of friends. The fifth is to be acquaintances at the dinner table, and then there is the feeling of husband and wife. Shang Guandandan took back his dissatisfaction. With a look in his eyes, he continued, coughing slightly. Qinyanan quickly poured the water and handed it over with the cup in both hands. Shang Guan took the water and nodded in approval. Sunangzio looked at Qinyanan and felt that her teeth were itching. Yesijan was still Yesijan after all. Even though she had lost her memory, she was still like this in her bones. Her indifferent attitude towards Shang Guan was like a little daughter-in-law trying to please her mother-in-law. Shang Guandandan claimed to be Lu Chang'an's mother. Sunangxiu couldn't believe it for a while, but Qin Yanan didn't seem to be as surprised as Sunangxiu. Even though Qin Yanan called Shang Guandandan Dan Dan instead of calling her elders, the intimacy was transparent. He has a decent junior attitude but is not fake. The current situation is that Shang Guandandan called Qin Yanan and Sunangxiu upstairs and came to Lu Chang'an's room. They had been talking about Book of Rights and female commandments for a long time. If it weren't for Shang Guandandan's frightening sense of oppression, Sunangxiu would have left long ago. Who would be interested in listening to these old garbage in what age it is now? How do you understand the way of being a husband? Shang Guandandan held the water glass in front of him with both hands. His sitting posture was still upright and dignified, his waist was particularly straight, and he looked at Sunangxiu indifferently. After listening to the nonsense for so long, Sunangxiu finally breathed a sigh of relief and said coldly, "My understanding of the way of being a husband is the latest version of the marriage law. If you don't understand, just search it on your phone." Shang Guandandan took out his mobile phone and searched for the marriage law, and couldn't help but frown. "I stayed up late to write the chapter yesterday morning and planned to update it in the evening. However, I caught a cold in the afternoon and couldn't write it at night, so I will make up for it today." Xiahua is indeed frail and sickly. If there are interruptions or no updates when it is time to update, it is basically just because she is sick. There is absolutely no intention of slacking off or maliciously teasing readers. I finished this chapter today, please vote for me. Thanks to book friend Wang Menfu for his generous reward, a new ally has been added to this book. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 436. The first truly large-scale milestone in human history to achieve equality between men and women occurred after 1949. Along with the slogan "Women can also hold up half the sky," its significance has been ignored by Western circles that have the power to speak in the world. So that modern women in this country rarely feel grateful to the old man who promoted this event. In a country where women cannot even guarantee their right to name, and where women are required to take their husband's surname after marriage, both men and women talk about democracy and freedom, which presents a subtle, ridiculous, and absurd feeling. They seem to have deceived themselves. The marriage law promulgated in 1950 was the last great and profound revolution in the marriage and family system in thousands of years. It has contained the main spirit of the provisions that have been revised many times since then. The article was not long, so Shang Guandandan did not read it quickly, but he finished it quickly and then gently put down his phone. Neither Sunangxiu nor Qin Yanan bothered her to check, but looked at each other from time to time, with elusive emotions and meanings in each other's eyes. Okay, Shang Guandandan nodded, and then looked at Sunangxiu with some confusion, "But what does this have to do with you being a Taiwanese?" Qin Yanan covered her mouth and chuckled. This person was obviously the Empress Dowager from 2000 years ago. How did Qin Yanan know that Lu Chang'an had taught Shang Guandandan many evenings about politics and history? We are talking about a principle, not the application of the law. Sunangxiu was a little confused. Who is Shang Guandandan? Qin Yanan naturally knew his origin and identity, but Qin Yanan had just seen Shang Guandandan again and had no chance to communicate with Shang Guandandan. Could it be that Lu Chang'an informed him in advance? This may be true. You also know that what we are talking about is a principle, not a question of the application of the law. Shang Guandandan raised his eyebrows slightly, and the girl's already crisp voice became sharper, but it was not hysterical, but full of majesty. With a dignified air of reprimand, I ask you how you understand the way of being a husband. What I want is some heartfelt words that are reasonable and reasonable. There is no need for you to explain the legal provisions. After saying that, Shang Guandandan ignored Sunangxiu and stopped talking, his face turned ugly, and turned to look at Qin Yanan. Qin Yanan knew that Shang Guandandan wanted her to talk about the way of doing business. In fact, Sunangzio has at least experienced the poison of feudal dross. Qinyanan has truly grown up under the red flag. Her views on husband and wife are different from Sunangzio's, and it is impossible for her to have the same concept as Shangguandandan. But some things in tradition will always involuntarily affect some people who are willing to accept it. I used to like Hiju's half-dead Tong Changman everything is wrong. In my personal opinion, in Pan Yu's mourning and Yuan Zhen's condemnation of sadness and Sushi's Jiangchenzi Yumao January 2 10 Days of Night Dream and Hiju's half-dead Tong, everything is wrong at Changman, my favorite is Hiju's. Qinyanan's tone was gentle as she spoke her condolences, but the corners of her mouth were slightly raised. With her own experience, her mood naturally interpreted the artistic conception in the words, making her temperament become like the lonely moon at night. Everything is wrong when you go through Changman again. What happened when you came together is different. After the sycamores are half dead and the frost clears, the white-headed mandarin ducks fly without their companions. The original grass is exposed to the early morning sun, and the old habitat is surrounded by the new ridge. I lie on an empty bed and listen to the rain outside the south window. Who will stay up late at night to mend clothes, lying on an empty bed listening to the rain outside the south window, who will stay up late at night to mend clothes again? Qinyanan recited this eulogy that everyone knew softly, as if caught in the scene, who will stay up late again? Mending clothes at night? This is probably the sentence. In fact, the entire 6 chapters of A Floating Life is just the story of this sentence. Qinyanan, you really know how to do what he wants. Sunangzio sneered and showed admiration. Yesijin liked Yechinayu so much at the beginning that she made him a treasure. Today, in front of Shangguandandan, she still has little ability to figure out what's going on. Not bad. You misunderstood. Qinyanan smiled faintly and shook his head. I'm not saying that I agree that women should obey the 3 obediences and 4 virtues, be virtuous and serve men at home. It's just that the way of being a husband is the way of husband and wife after all, not that getting each other is the result, but 2 people will eventually live to become an indispensable part of each other. It is his living habit and his unforgettable scenery, it makes him dare not imagine his life without you and makes him free. Lying in bed listening to the rain outside the south window, who would sigh again after burning the midnight oil to mend clothes? The sigh was due to the pain of love, rather than rejoicing that the evil woman was finally gone. As he spoke, Qinyanan glanced at Sunangzio with a hint of contempt. Being the most suitable woman to live with in his eyes is what I understand as the way to be a husband. Shangguandandan's eyes showed approval, and he nodded thoughtfully. Of course, this was a gesture that he had to show as the true master of the harem, as he was above the queen, able to compete with the emperor. I have never had a deep understanding of the way of being a husband, and I have so many thoughts. This song Half Dead Tong Everything is Wrong after Changman has a unique charm. Qinyanan pursed her lips and smiled silently, adding some hot water to Shangguandandan's cup. In order to please her, you cursed yourself to death before you had anything to do with Lu Chang'an. Qinyanan, you are really cruel. Sunangzio took 2 steps back in shame and looked at Shangguandandan with a sneer. I know you have an extraordinary background. Can you give me an answer? Who are you and why do you interfere in our affairs? I said, I am his mother. Shangguandandan showed a gentle smile when he thought of his son. You look like his mother, no matter how elegant and noble Shangguandandan is when he is quiet, and how obvious his commanding air is in his words, that kind of girlish immaturity will still show up from time to time. It is impossible for Sunangzio to see it. Not coming out. It's hard to imagine that you are an old woman over 100 years old when you look like this, right? Qinyanan said with a smile. If I were an old woman, yes Ijan, so would you. Sunangzio sneered at Qinyanan, who had no self-awareness at all. I'm Qinyanan, I'm 25 this year. Qinyanan suppressed her worries and couldn't lose the situation, even though she couldn't wait to ask Lu Chang'an face to face. I am Sunangzio, I am 14 years old this year. Sunangzio said without changing her expression. Shang Guandandan looked at Sunangziu, then at Qin Yinan, opened his mouth, and his eyes fell on the crack of the living room door. "Hello, tonight, have you had dinner tonight? I'll make a midnight snack for you." Zhou Shuling was discovered, and she opened the door and walked in cautiously. She felt that the air conditioning in the living room was too strong, and she couldn't help but hug her. "Cross your arms." "What did you hear?" Sunangziu frowned and opened her palms. "I don't even understand what you are talking about." Zhou Shuling was startled. The little girl in front of her looked as ferocious as a ghost. She ran to Qin Yinan for fear of being killed and silenced. "Miss Qin, I really just want to listen. I understand what you said. My name is Qin Yinan. I am 25 years old this year." Apart from this sentence, everything else he said before seemed like fantasy. "It's okay." Qin Yinan patted Zhou Shuling's back and looked around. "Hey, where is Zhou Dongdong? I'm doing my homework at home." When did she go back? Qin Yinan looked back at Shang Guandandan, who shook his head and didn't notice at all. "How did I know?" Sunangziu said impatiently when she found Qin Yinan looking at her again. How could she pay attention to a stupid child who was so stupid? "We were just talking about how a wife should treat her husband." "What do you think?" Shang Guandandan said to Zhou Shuling. "Isn't that just? What should I cook for him if he wants to eat, and how else should I treat him? He can't be offered up as a bodhisattva, haha." How could Zhou Shuling have so many thoughts? She didn't understand them at all when she just eavesdropped. But Miss Jean is really good at reciting poems with great emotion. It would be great if Zhou Dongdong could memorize such long poems. After Zhou Shuling finished speaking, she looked at Shang Guandandan. She felt a coldness on her back now and just wanted to leave here quickly. The atmosphere in this room was like the two armies had not yet launched their battle and hundreds or thousands of people would die at any time in the confrontation. But he didn't know whether to live or die and had to sneak through the middle of the confrontation between the two armies. "Go back. Next time you make an appointment with him, we can talk to him face to face." "I'm going to take a rest," Shang Guandandan said with some satisfaction. He helped him discipline these jealous women. I think he would be considerate of her. After all the hard work and gratitude, he returned to her arms and felt the selfless maternal love. He realized that all the women in this world only know how to be jealous. Only his mother can understand that he is most tired of this matter, and only his mother's arms do not have that much intrigues and bullshit. Gentle. Kindly. Peaceful. Peace of mind. This was Shang Guandantan's ambition. Shang Guandantan couldn't help but look forward to the scene of him standing on the bed, him standing beside the bed and leaning in his arms, while she caressed his head with tenderness, the scene of a loving mother and a filial son. "I wish everyone good luck in the year of the pig, a happy year of the pig, and good health in the year of the pig. Xiahua is here to wish everyone a happy birthday and ask for a red envelope for little kid Zhou Dongdong. You can click on the characters to show your love or send gifts. After all, little kid Zhou Dongdong is working hard on the character popularity list every week. Finally, please give me a monthly pass. I'm really immortal." Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 437. In fact, if Shang Guandandan, Sunangziu and Qin Yinan have a good relationship, they can fight the landlord together. Zhou Shuling just joined in the fun and could also play mahjong. Even if Zhou Dongdong comes, you can still play mahjong while playing Dongdong. Harmony and harmony are endless joys. At this time, Lu Chang'an was playing landlord with Gao Duai, Bai Hui, and Miao Yingying. Bai Hui and Miao Yingying agreed that if Gao Duai and Lu Chang'an were allowed to play together, then there would be one position left, whether it was Bai Hui or Miao Yingying, or it would be unfair for two girls to cooperate. Bai Hui and Miao Yingying clearly felt the difference, but it was absolutely unacceptable to say that they were stupid. The fair gameplay they proposed was that Gao Duai guided Miao Yingying to play cards. Lu Chang'an could not call the landlord. If Bai Hui called the landlord, she could double it, but if she did not double, others were not allowed to double. How is this fair? Lu Chang'an looked at the big and small kings, 3 twos and 4 aces in his hand, and was a little dissatisfied with Bai Hui, who was happily calling the landlord there. It must be someone named Liang who gave her the courage to call her landlord, right? After 2 hours of fighting, Lu Chang'an won about 1,000 yuan, Bai Hui lost 800 yuan, and Miao Yingying and Gao Duai lost 200 yuan together. They could have beaten Bai Hui, the landowner, to share the money, but Miao Yingying lost 200 yuan. Yingying, often dissatisfied with Gao Duai's guidance and likes to play her cards self-righteously by counting other people's cards. It was late at night and the yard was a little cold, so the card game broke up. Bai Hui actually wanted to get back some money. Miao Yingying complained that Gao Duai was not good at poker, and Gao Duai huffed and puffed with authority. "Are you feeling distressed?" Lu Chang'an looked at Bai Hui and smiled. "Not really." Bai Hui's 2 middle fingers took turns tapping on the table. "That's good. As soon as my stock price goes up, I can make a lot of money in one day." Bai Hui didn't take the 1,000 yuan seriously, he just felt unhappy about losing. Many times he clearly had good cards, but Lu Chang'an just didn't play them. "Own. What's the name of the stock you bought?" Lu Chang'an asked casually. "Dawajin," Bai Hui said happily, "it has been increasing since I bought it. Now it has increased by 5 to 600,000, right? Did you buy it in September?" "Yeah." "Then let me do the math. There are 9 strokes in total with the word Dawa, the main target is Jin, and the 2 strokes in human, which add up to 11 strokes. If you bought this stock in September, the best time to sell it is November. Considering your IQ, you can sell it when it reaches 250 yuan." Lu Chang'an did some divination. "You're only 250, Bai Hui dipped her middle finger in tea and wrote Lu Chang'an is 250 on the table. After finishing writing, Bai Hui looked at Lu Chang'an and laughed happily, tapping the table with his middle finger again, feeling proud. "My serious advice, believe it or not." Lu Chang'an didn't take it seriously. Bai Hui thought about it. The reason why he randomly selected the stock was because he thought that Lu Chang'an chose the biology department. Since Lu Chang'an chose this way, it means that he is optimistic about the development prospects of biology-related industries. Bai Hui happened to see the stock and I bought it, then should I listen to his advice and sell it in November? Bai Hui frowned, thinking that if he didn't sell at that time and fell later, wouldn't Lu Chang'an face him with a mocking face of "I made you not listen to me?" But if you listen to him and sell, if the price continues to rise, you will only make less money. You can also laugh at him for being self-righteous and blame him for causing you to lose profits. If it really starts to fall after selling, it will be him. It helped him stop his losses, so Bai Hui happily decided to sell it at 250 yuan. Is it because many girls don't have nails on their middle fingers to make life easier? Lu Chang'an looked at the messages on his phone and then looked at Bai Hui's clean and white middle finger and asked. Bai Hui's cheeks were slightly red, and she was a little embarrassed and angry. She didn't know if Lu Chang'an's convenience in life meant convenience in terms of privacy. "Oh, I understand. The middle finger is used to wear contact lenses, and leaving nails on will easily poke the eyeballs. And when applying eye cream and some cosmetics, leaving on nails will make the makeup sink into the gaps between the nails and make it difficult to clean." Lu Chang'an thought for a while and then got it, "and you also need your middle finger without nails when taking a shower to avoid scratching fragile and delicate parts." "Yes, so when many boys see girls without nails on their middle fingers, they show a knowingly obscene smile or ask for a special reminder." "It's really stupid." Bai Hui nodded thoughtfully. "At least Lu Chang'an is not so stupid. Let's forget about the girls. Mature women often only have their middle fingers without nails, and they don't think about it. Is one finger enough?" When this topic came up, Bai Hui put his fingers on the table, and then thought about how Lu Chang'an noticed such details. Isn't there only an nuan in his eyes? He actually saw that Bai Hui's middle finger had no fingernails. Bai Hui tilted her head and looked at the scattered stars in the sky. "En Nuan actually thought I was stupid and asked me such a question." Lu Chang'an smiled and replied to En Nuan's message. En Nuan flew to catch a scenic spot today and was still energetic in the evening. After reporting what he had seen today, he started to try tease Lu Chang'an. After all, the two of them have reached the stage where she has had her breasts touched. Asking traps and ambiguous questions to tease her boyfriend is the initial stage when most of the girls with strong sexual power begin to reveal their true colors. "You are indeed stupid." Bai Hui glanced at him. "This bastard." From an objective point of view, En Nuan asked this question, where is the correct answer for you to answer it seriously? With such an answer, how could En Nuan continue to talk about shameless and lewd topics with you? From this point of view, Lu Chang'an is indeed stupid. It seems that he is not particularly straight in front of her. When facing En Nuan, he is often silly. Bai Hui thought this, and the feeling that his chest was about to explode just now subsided a little. After chatting in the yard for a while, Bai Hui and Miao Yingying shared a room, Gao Duiai and Lu Chang'an shared a room, and each went back to his room. Gao Duiai wants to talk to Lu Chang'an all night. He has some questions to ask Lu Chang'an. Bai Hui and Miao Yingying saved time and went to take a shower together. Bai Hui looked at her middle finger and then told Miao Yingying with certainty that Lu Chang'an and En Nuan must have had sex. Miao Yingying was not surprised. After all, they were both college students and adults, but she felt that Lu Chang'an actually had the same relationship with En Nuan, because she had never seen Lu Chang'an post on moments or chat in social media to show affection. Isn't this just for herself? What are the characteristics of the backroad? Bai Hui thought about it and didn't agree with Miao Yingying's point of view, but he also said that the relationship between Lu Chang'an and En Nuan had nothing to do with him. Lu Chang'an was talking to Gao Duiai and replying to En Nuan's message. In the meantime, he received a message from Qin Yinan, asking if he could meet tonight. Lu Chang'an thought for a while and replied, "Jin'er, see you tomorrow. Today is the first day of the Lunar New Year, and I wish you all another New Year. By the way, I would like to ask for a monthly ticket and a pen for Dong Dong." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 438. When Lu Chang'an woke up in the morning, Gao Duiai was still sleeping soundly. He walked out in slippers, stretched his waist, moved his hands and feet, and took a deep breath. The mist filled the air far and near, and he could not see the nearby river. He couldn't even see the lake in the distance. Smelling the moist and fresh morning air, hearing the crowing of chickens and the barking of dogs, and the moist gravel and weeds in the yard under your feet, it really makes you feel like you are living in the countryside. Lu Chang'an walked out of the yard and stood on the field ridge for a while. He heard the sound of breathing accompanying running, and then saw a white shadow staggering out of the mist. It turned out to be Bai Fennel. It was a bit surprising that Bai Hui got up so early, earlier than Lu Chang'an, and even came back from a run, so Lu Chang'an stood on the side of the road and saluted for a while until she ran to him and stopped. Lazy guy. Bai Hui looked at Lu Chang'an with some pride because he got up early. Based on the movement distance calculated by the apex on the XYZ3 axis, it is estimated that the maximum swing distance will exceed 10 centimeters. Based on this calculation, during a marathon, your fat will also vibrate and move a distance of about 5 kilometers. Lu Chang'an said scientifically advice, running is not the right sport for you, even if you wear sports bra. What is he talking about? Bai Hui's cheeks bulged, and she blushed angrily. Her breathing calmed down, and she stared at Lu Chang'an angrily for 3 seconds, and then suddenly became proud. "Oh, this is indeed my trouble, Your family and Nuan must not have such troubles, I'm so envious, envious, envious. Bai Hui kept shouting envy, raised her hands and swayed up and down in the mist, twisted her butt and ran past Lu Chang'an, not accepting Lu Chang'an's scientific advice. Lu Chang'an frowned. His running posture was like that of a corgi with short legs, and he was wagging his butt. It was really ugly. In the morning, Lu Chang'an, Gao Duai, Miao Yingying and Bai Hui went to the city together. They had a class reunion to attend. Lu Chang'an was going to go to Qinyanan. He was not sure whether he would go. He could only decide whether he had time or was in the mood to end his relationship with Qinyanan. Let's talk after the meeting. After Lu Chang'an replied to Qinyanan last night, she did not send another text message to find out the details. After Qinyanan and Sunangziu met, they couldn't help but send messages wanting to meet so late. There was no doubt that there was only one possibility, and that was that what Lu Chang'an guessed might happen when they met actually happened. Sunangziu recognized Qinyanan. Yes, Ijin, and told this matter. Lu Chang'an just replied to her text message, letting her get the answer. After all, if Sunangziu didn't come up with any real evidence, Qinyanan would definitely need Lu Chang'an's confirmation. Lu Chang'an came to the suite at Lushan Mountain and saw Qinyanan lying on the sofa in the living room. Her long hair was scattered along the armrest, and the ends of her hair were coiled on the ground. Her slender body lazily occupied the entire sofa, as if carved from white jade. Her toes were tightly grasped together, and she held a square pillow in her hand and pressed it on her lower abdomen, staring blankly at the pot of bean sprouts growing on the bed. Few people grow bean sprouts as ornamental plants, but after the beans sprout, they look good in clumps, and they can be cut for cooking, which is also good. Lu Chang'an stood in front of her, and Qinyanan realized that Lu Chang'an was coming. She quickly sat up and straightened her long hair, slightly flustered and at a loss. You're here. Qinyanan fell silent. Sunangziu might have been wrong, or might have lied to her, but Lu Chang'an had no reason to do this. In fact, thinking about it now, there were many clues to prove his identity. It seems that when I sleepwalked in the past, it was not because of ghosts or other reasons. It was just that my past memories came out and took over my body again. Qinyanan thought a lot last night and also dug out the quilt. The technicians recovered the videos with mixed feelings, more of a trance and confusion. That's probably it. Why didn't you just tell me before? Qinyanan looked at Lu Chang'an with a complicated expression. She couldn't be sure what he was thinking. Did he prefer her to be Qinyanan? Or do you want her to become Yesijin? This is a very important question, so important that Qinyanan doesn't even want to know the answer, because she is worried that the answer he gives is not what she wants. In fact, she didn't even know what kind of answer she was hoping for. Because you want to be Qinyanan, and you want your life to be completely independent, I have communicated with Ziking, and we both believe that your ideas should be respected, and we should not force you to become the person we once cherished most. Lu Chang'an, he reached out his hand and gently stroked the back of her long hair, with gentle eyes. But you clearly wanted to tell me through Sunangziu yesterday that I am Yesijin. Qinyanan's emotions suddenly became difficult to control. You only think about your real sister Yesijin. Ziking and I respect your thoughts and don't want to tell you directly that you are Yesijin, but your disgust and hostility towards Sunangziu means that I can't hide it even if I want to. Lu Chang'an shook his head. If you treat her the same way the eldest daughter of the Qin family dealt with the third wife of the Zhu family, then she will not pay special attention to the details of your life experience that you intentionally or unintentionally reveal due to her fixed mindset. This is a human habit. Once your attitude changes, she will change her mindset and start to pay special attention to some of the details of your words or actions. I guess you must have discovered it because of some details that aroused her suspicion yesterday. So, I know that Sunangziu will definitely find out that you are Yesijin. This is inevitable. At the same time, I can neither kill Sunangziu to hide the secret, nor can I prevent you from meeting each other forever, so I feel that yesterday is the time for you to know the truth. I just know that there is no way to prevent you from knowing the truth, but I don't necessarily want you to know the truth. I hope you can understand the difference here, because I don't want you to misunderstand me. Looking at his eyes, Chinyan's scattered eyes finally focused, and the disappointment, anger, and even some emotions of being deceived and betrayed disappeared. She knew that a person could make him feel that he could not be misunderstood by her, so this person would not be misunderstood by her. It must be very important. I hope you can understand, I don't want you to misunderstand me. Probably the most sincere concern he can express is like this. Others may not feel that special concern when they say this, but when it comes from his mouth, Chinyan even felt a sense of pleading. He is the most proud person in the world. He is accustomed to not bowing his head or explaining. Chinyan turned sideways, leaned on his shoulder, and closed her eyes. She didn't sleep all night, and she shouldn't be so tired. However, her emotions and worries, and the ups and downs of her mood, made her energy haggard. In fact, she had more or less experienced the panic process of worrying that she would become another person. After accepting, it was not too hard to accept or shocked that she had another person's identity. What she had always cared about was what Lu Chang'an's intentions were. After receiving his explanation, Chinyan relaxed a lot both physically and mentally. As long as he didn't think Chinyan was insignificant and desperately wanted her to become another person. He believed that only Yesijin was qualified to stay by his side, not the current Chinyan, then it will feel much better. All that's left is to accept the reality and let him answer his questions. Chinyan still closed her eyes, still leaning on his shoulder, smelling the familiar but extraordinarily intimate atmosphere, feeling at ease as never before. I wasn't shy, and I didn't think about what was there and what wasn't. I just felt that leaning on this shoulder gave me a sense of dependence and peace of mind. Why does Sunangziu hate me so much? Su Mei can become Sunangziu. Chinyan is not eager to know the reason why Yesijin has become what she is now. She wants to know why the former Yesijin is so jealous of Sunangziu. This may involve some grudges that she really cares about. If Yesijin was just a normal sister, how could she be hated by Su Mei with jealousy and emotional resentment? This seemed to be the really important reason at the moment. After all, someone like Su Mei was thinking about her with such resentment that it was like a thorn in the back. I recommend a book called Cross-Border Leisure Store. The author is a female high school student who is repeating a grade. During the video, she was wearing a JK uniform. Although she didn't speak, I could smell the smell of horsetail bugs through the screen. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 439. In fact, it is not uncommon for sister-in-law and sister-in-law to have a bad relationship. Nowadays, it is very common for sister-in-law and sister-in-law to complain about each other and even wish each other to die on some social forums. You must know that in many cases, the younger sister has been the most favored object of the elder brother for more than 10 or 20 years. Suddenly a woman comes and wants to take away all his favor. It is normal to find it hard to accept. As a sister-in-law, I feel that I am the woman who will accompany him throughout his life, and this sister will get married sooner or later, so it is okay to tolerate it for a while, but if this sister is always hanging around at home, without even realizing that her brother has a wife, she will still be the same as before. If you want your brother to pamper you, that is naturally unbearable. Plus being a mother-in-law makes it even more annoying. Sister-in-law, and mother-in-law, these three are the core characters of many stinky and long TV dramas. The so-called three women in one drama has a basis in reality. Nowadays, there are relatively few TV dramas like this. Women also have a need for the grandeur and high-end sense of struggle, so they are not so interested in TV dramas that are more about trivial bickering due to family environment and background. They have been promoted to palace battles. How cool that is, Watching the little bitches die one by one, the resentment of women in the family who want someone to die can be experienced and relieved. After all, sisters-in-law and mother-in-law in reality cannot be killed casually. But the problem is, even if the sister-in-law and sister-in-law don't like each other, no matter how much they dislike each other, if they meet again 100 years later, they should be able to smile and forget their grudges, right? It is rare for someone to hate someone for so long. If you had not lost your memory as Yesijin, you would know the answer. Lu Chang'an looked at the window in front of him, his thoughts wandering. In that era, the love between men and women was just an insignificant embellishment against the background of the big era. How much people with lofty ideals have great ambitions to make sacrifices, and dare to make the sun and moon change the sky behind this, whether intentionally or unintentionally. There are countless emotional deaths and betrayals. In the face of blood and sacrifice, many people died without hesitation. How can they be remembered? That romance? Now that things have happened, the blood has solidified into the flag, the red scarf, and the national color. After looking around at the piece that makes people sigh with emotion, they gradually recall those romantic days more and more. You haven't lost the memory of that time. Why don't I remember? Qin Yinan tilted her head slightly and looked at his cheek. She couldn't think of herself as a different person deep in her soul, but her rational self-understanding was still yes. Qin Yinan couldn't help but think of the information he received in his mind when he walked into an armored vehicle with Lu Chang'an and touched the coffin, or that memory. You may have to ask Shang Guandandan for details and principles. Lu Chang'an also had difficulty grasping the little old lady's thoughts. Shang Guandandan often ran into the coffin mid-sentence. Lu Chang'an didn't think she was trying to show off, but that was just how she was. Temperament. He stops talking after a while, and has no interest in focusing on the topic. Is she really your mother? Although this is a question that Lu Chang'an has already talked about, and it will annoy him, Qin Yinan is not afraid that he will be angry now. She is not only Qin Yinan, she is also Yesijin. Qin Yinan might be worried about his reaction, but Yesijin shouldn't need it. Lu Chang'an's expression rarely shows a wry smile, so his expression looks like a face that has undergone many knives and surgeries. His expression is slightly stiff, and it is difficult to accurately express the feeling of a wry smile. The corners of his eyes twitched, and then he stretched out his hand. He pinched Qin Yinan's nose. Qin Yinan let out a shallow moan from her nose, which smelled like coquettishness. The coquettishness accompanying her low mood was soft and charming. You said before that you felt the last memory of Yesijin. After that, Shang Guandandan found Yesijin and rescued you. It was probably because it was difficult for the coffin to preserve the stagnant vital signs of two people at the same time, or because it involved to the energy supply, the balance of absorbing vitality and blood and distributing it, etc. In short, Shang Guandandan did not let you and her coexist in the coffin forever, but turned you into a baby one day and sent you out of the coffin. That day it's your birthday now. Lu Chang'an turned his head and glanced at Qin Yinan, who was leaning on his shoulder. She was only shorter than him, so she was not particularly condescending, but she felt close to her. Let him try to distinguish whether there is a big difference between the relationship between then and now. Why did she save me? Qin Yinan thought of her feelings when she saw Shang Guandandan yesterday. Whether it was Shang Guandandan towards her or she towards Shang Guandandan, they obviously felt more close to each other. This must not be the case. It's not an unfounded feeling. If she and Shang Guandandan didn't have such a connection, Shang Guandandan's attitude towards her yesterday probably wouldn't be much better than towards Sunangxiu. Maybe it would still be better. After all, Sunangxiu is annoying at first sight. Lu Chang'an was silent for a while, and he did not continue to distinguish the difference between Qin Yinan now by his side and when he was holding Yesijin's little hand. He thought about it and felt that there was no need to continue to hide it. Since she already knew her original identity, he should return her memories that were originally kept with him. Because she felt the aura of my essence in your body, Lu Chang'an said calmly. After all, Yechinayu and Yesijin have experienced plum blossom several times in one night. Ah, Qin Yinan couldn't help but sit up straight. Her black pupils were like rolling glass beads, clear and moist, her long eyelashes were trembling, and the touching blush was like rouge spread in the stream, traces like clouds. The mist spread and smeared all over her beautiful face. Although she was shy and nervous, she still opened and closed her lips slightly, looking at him blankly. Lu Chang'an sat upright, as if he didn't see her expression. He just continued to maintain his calm appearance. He coughed lightly, picked up the water glass in front of him and took a sip of water. He drank a few more sips and touched the quilt. He rubbed the palm of his hand with the bottom several times and said, "The water is cold." "Oh, I'm going to change a pot of water." Qin Yinan hurriedly stood up with the kettle in hand. She didn't even put on her shoes. She stepped on the floor with her smooth and round feet, like a sneaky cat trotting after being discovered. "Pour cold water and add hot water." Qin Yinan pursed her lips and came back with the kettle. She pushed the long hair behind her ears to the sides of her cheeks, carefully poured Lu Chang'an a cup of boiling water, and then whispered, "The water is a bit hot." Qin Yinan held down the hem of her nightgown with both hands, and sat down imitating Lu Chang'an's upright posture, instead of leaning on his shoulders as naturally as before. This is why Sunangxiu still hates you, even though it was caused by her own hands. That night, she and Qin Peng played cards and drank together. Later, she brought a pot of drugged wine, and everyone drank. But she didn't expect that someone around her secretly joined Qin Peng's organization. This person caused her plan to be disrupted. Qin Peng was taken away, leaving the three of us sleeping together. Later, that's it. Lu Chang'an took the water cup, drank the boiling hot water, and exhaled, "That's it, I won't go into the details." Who wants to hear the details? Qin Yinan only felt that her cheeks were hot, probably like the hot water rolling down his lips, tongue, and throat. It turned out that she had had a relationship with him before, and this incident had already made her difficult for a while. "Face it calmly, not to mention that now you know a shameful detail." He said that he would not go into details. He has already told the most shameful details. I mean, the details I'm talking about are the details of how her original plans were destroyed and disrupted. Lu Chang'an returned to his gentle posture after drinking the water. "I'm not writing sensual novels. Can you describe the other details in detail? How many years ago it happened? Just listen to it as someone else's story. Can this be regarded as someone else's story?" Qin Yinan was startled, turned around and looked at Lu Chang'an with a red face. "You are still there, she is also there, and I am also there. You all remember it clearly, and I also know it. Can this be regarded as someone else's story, other people's stories?" Yechinayu, Yesijin, and Sume. Lu Chang'an smiled. Today Lu Chang'an, Qin Yinan, Sunangxiu, for these three people, the stories of Yechinayu, Yesijin, and Sume are other people's stories. I think you are the only one who can use it as a story. Sunangxiu and I definitely can't. Qin Yinan was slightly annoyed, but this emotion diluted her shyness. She leaned over and rested her cheek on his shoulder. "Your memory is too long. Many things will naturally forget the emotions when they happened, and become stories that seem to have nothing to do with you. But Sunangxiu and I, unlike you, can't forget the emotions when these things happened. Even though I don't remember it, when I mention it, it's an emotional story, it's my own story, and it's no different from memories. Memories, of course, have emotions. Remembering the various emotions at that time, shame, anger, joy, sadness, and all kinds of emotions are the reasons why memories are unforgettable, otherwise it will just be a story that seems to have nothing to do with you." Qin Yinan felt that Lu Chang'an was both passionate and ruthless. It couldn't be said that he was ruthless to her. He obviously still cared about her. It could only be said that he clearly distinguished his memories from his current life. You and her definitely can't do it. You mean, you guys will continue to fight in the future? What can Lu Chang'an say? Drink more hot water. She is thinking about it. Do I have to give in to her? There is a saying that goes well, take one step back step by step, endure the anger for a while, and get angry all the time. Qin Yinan rolled her eyes at Lu Chang'an. You and Yuan Nuan, let the years be quiet, don't worry about us little old ladies' grudges. Lu Chang'an understood what Qin Yinan meant. Now Qin Yinan and Sunan Qiu's grievances have long been deeply rooted. This is no longer a matter of jealousy. It seems that the mutual dislike of each other's grudges with Sunangxiu will help Qin Yinan accept the reality that she was once Yesijin. Lu Chang'an does not want Qin Yinan to go through the heart-wrenching process of self-identity confusion again. I still have many things I want to know. Qin Yinan calmed down the stubbornness on her cheeks and became gentle and coquettish. What do you want to know? Lu Chang'an told her even the secrets he least wanted to tell. There was nothing he couldn't tell her, unless she was asking about some details about him and Sunangxiu. I want to know what happened when Yesijin was with you when she was a child. Qin Yinan looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly, with gentle eyes. When you were a child, you liked to pester your brother. What kind of entanglement? For example, my brother went out and promised to come back during dinner. If he was delayed and didn't come back, you wouldn't go to eat by yourself. You would have to wait for your brother to come back no matter how late it was. One time, your brother met military bandits on the road and started filming. After a delay of one night, my brother abandoned the caravan after escaping and hurried back alone. It was the next morning. You were still sitting on the small stool at the door, with several maids and women around you. They could do something with you. No, you are so stubborn. I carried you to drink a few sips of porridge, and you fell asleep, and you still had to hug your brother and refuse to let go. Why are there such clingy children? Yes, it was when you were a child. The temperature in Laodi, Hunan suddenly dropped in the past 2 days. Xiahua didn't wear enough clothes when visiting relatives. She caught a cold and got better today, so there was no update for 2 days. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikin Ru Xiahua. Chapter 440. There are swaying leaves dancing outside the window. The childhood memories of my brother's mouth. Brother and sister sitting on the soft sofa. Listen to my brother talk about the past things. Listening to mom talking about the past has the tone of remembering the bitterness and remembering the sweetness, while listening to brother talking about the past has a warm and sweet emotion. Qin Yinan refused from leaning on his shoulder to holding his arm. Let go, the slightly curved corners of your mouth are always full of cuteness and coquettishness. Listening to him talk about the past, it seems that there is no rejection or difficulty as expected, nor does it feel like you need to force yourself to turn these stories into memories. Qin Yinan also understood that he had indeed treated and raised Yesijin as his real sister, so much so that Su Mei went against everyone's will and forced Yesijin and Qin Peng to have a relationship, which ultimately led to Yechinayu and Yesijin spending the night together. Scored several goals. To use a more popular description, Su Mei moved his reverse scales, which also caused him to cut off his relationship with Su Mei. I suspect that Shang Guandandan is close to you, because she thinks she is your mother. Some people like to be teachers, but Shang Guandandan likes to be a mother. She has a great obsession with being a mother. Lu Chang'an thought about it for a while, then doubted it with certainty. In her opinion, she turned you into a baby. This process is equivalent to her reincarnation, so of course she is your mother. She. Qin Yinan thought of Shang Guandandan's childish face, his tendency to speak in an old-fashioned manner, and the majesty and elegance between his eyebrows, and couldn't help but laugh awkwardly. She doesn't really think so, does she? This is very likely. You can go to her and talk to her next time. Without Sunangxiu. Lu Chang'an paused. You can ask her how she made Yesijin become Qin Yinan. Qin Yinan nodded. In fact, this was what she really wanted to know, and it was also a rare question that Lu Chang'an couldn't answer. She could only ask Shang Guandandan about this. Qin Yan'an couldn't help but smile when he thought that his brother was the best killer of children, girls, and women of all ages in history, yet he could do nothing to Shang Guandandan. I'm going to cook from yesterday afternoon to today's noon. Qin Yan'an didn't eat any rice. She also felt that when the body is particularly healthy and full of energy, there is more need and desire for eating. No wonder Lu Chang'an I care a lot about 3 meals a day, and now I can understand it better. Today I'll get some green onions and cucumbers for dipping, and a bottle of erkuadu, and stir-fry 2 side dishes. Let's celebrate together as brothers and sisters and have a few drinks together. Lu Chang'an hasn't eaten northern food for a while, even though the green onions and cucumbers are not used for dipping. It cannot be said to be a representative of northern flavor. Many northerners are not used to it. Qin Yan'an was slightly surprised, her eyes were bright, she pulled her hair out and glared at him angrily. I don't do this. You will eat whatever I do. Lu Chang'an could only sigh that the little girl was obviously a little more arrogant. In the end, Qin Yan'an made some cucumbers and cold scallions to satisfy him, but this was by no means a refreshing way to eat, with scallions and cucumbers dipping in the sauce and chewing it up. Lu Chang'an felt a little regretful, but he didn't do it himself and just waited. When eating, if the other party doesn't specifically ask him to comment, he won't criticize. I don't want to smell green onions when I talk to you, Qin Yan'an explained. She also didn't want to smell him smell like green onions, because when she was talking to him just now, she had been leaning close to him, and his breath was so close. Like seductive silk lingering around her ears and lips. If this had the smell of green onions in it, how terrible would it be? It's like singing a Jiangnan tune of boundless wind and moon, and a Suana suddenly rises passionately, tearing all the boundless wind and moon to pieces for you. After lunch, Lu Chang'an had a conversation with Qin Yan'an. Knowing that she didn't sleep all night, he told her to take a rest in the afternoon. He watched her waist swaying under her loose nightgown as she walked into the bedroom. She looked back at him. Lu Chang'an smiled slightly and left Qin Yan'an's room. Walking down the mountain from Lushan Mountain, the mountain wind blew against his face. Lu Chang'an hugged his arm and was hugged by her all morning. Lu Chang'an felt that he was smart. This way, he didn't need to push her away and let her, who was emotionally sensitive at this moment, think too much. He could also prevent himself from being tempted and maintain a peaceful state of mind, although he could control it even if he didn't do this. Live on your own, but this should be better. It's still pretentious, Lu Chang'an finally summed it up, but as an ordinary college student, what's wrong with occasionally being pretentious? Lu Chang'an walked to the Zhezhou Bridge and stood in the center of the bridge for a while looking up at the statue of the great man at the head of the island. During the National Day holiday, visitors from all over the place were welcomed here, and Zhezhou finally got back the lost 5A level scenic spot sign. The river is surging and there are so many tourists. It makes people feel that the past is like clouds. It would be very enjoyable to pick it up again and talk about it carefully with old friends. Lu Chang'an had not yet decided whether to go to meet Gao Duai and his group in the afternoon, so he went home first and saw Zhou Dongdong digging a hole under the sycamore tree with a small hoe as big as a palm. Lu Chang'an walked over and glanced at the door of the utility room downstairs. Then he came to the sycamore tree and leaned against the tree to watch Zhou Dongdong working. Brother Chang'an, I want to dig a big hole. Seeing that Brother Chang'an was just looking at him without asking what he was doing, Zhou Dongdong couldn't help but report it himself. Oh, you continue. Lu Chang'an nodded. After digging for a while, Zhou Dongdong dug a hole as big as a vegetable bowl and threw away the little hoe. This pit is so big, it can hold a moon at night, Lu Chang'an exclaimed. Zhou Dongdong suddenly realized a question: why can a puddle of any size contain a moon? After a second, Zhou Dongdong realized that he definitely couldn't figure out the problem, so he gave up thinking, ran to get 2 mineral water bottles, filled them with water, and poured the water into the pit. "Let's set off firecrackers together." Joe Dong Dong threw away the mineral water bottle and happily took out a small dusty firecracker and lighter from his pocket to invite Lu Chang'an. Not interested. It's normal for someone to secretly set off some firecrackers on National Day. Lu Chang'an didn't ask Joe Dong Dong where he picked up the firecrackers. "I'll play by myself." Joe Dong Dong pouted, lit the firecrackers with a lighter, quickly threw the lighter into the puddle, then ran to the side with the firecrackers and looked at the puddle. Joe Dong Dong looked at the lighter in the puddle and was stunned for a moment. Crack! The firecracker exploded between Joe Dong Dong's two fingers. Joe Dong Dong looked at his fingers in disbelief, and then looked at Brother Chang'an, who was laughing there, and burst into tears at the top of his voice. "Joe Dong Dong, what's wrong?" Zhou Shuling opened the window and shouted from upstairs. "It's okay, I'm fighting with her," Lu Chang'an said. "When did you come back? Have you eaten?" There was no doubt that Zhou Shuling didn't care that Joe Dong Dong was crying loudly after being beaten. "After eating, I just got back. Don't you want to go to the store? I'll come back and take a shower before going." "I'm very busy today. Can you go to the store and help me later?" "Okay." Lu Chang'an thought for a while and decided to help. Joe Dong Dong saw Chang'an's brother and mother talking, and ignored the injured child at all. He simply started howling at the top of his throat, which gradually turned into ouch, ow, ow. "It's so ugly to cry." Listening to her cry, Lu Chang'an remembered Lu Ying's cry in the first part of Country Love Story. He took Joe Dong Dong's finger and spit some saliva on her finger. "Lick your fingers again." Lu Chang'an felt that she should have learned her lesson and stuffed her fingers into her mouth. Joe Dong Dong sucked his finger and looked at Lu Chang'an in surprise. "It doesn't hurt anymore. Do you admit that you are a stupid kid?" Lu Chang'an asked, pointing to the lighter in the puddle. Joe Dong Dong pouted and looked at the lighter, then looked at his fingers. "It must be because that lighter is weird. Go play with Lu Sin." Lu Chang'an was too lazy to talk nonsense with her, and patted Joe Dong Dong's butt and sent her to play with the dog. Lu Sin, Joe Dong Dong ran to the dog house under the stairs and waved. Lu Sin ran out happily, jumped up and down around Joe Dong Dong, and went to play with Joe Dong Dong at the grape trellis. Joe Dong Dong and Lu Sin played for a while and then came back. When he saw his mother going downstairs and Brother Chang'an walking out of the community, he quickly followed him like a little tail. After running for 2 steps, he stretched out his hand without grabbing Brother Chang'an's finger, and then hurriedly as he ran a little faster, Brother Chang'an's hand swung back and he quickly grabbed it. I recommend Ye Shui's original cultivation of immortality. In the 666th year of the Alliance, a nearly broken server was excavated. After years of painstaking efforts to crack it, I learned that in ancient times, humans were the most powerful creatures in the universe. They could fly into the sky and escape from the earth, overwhelming mountains and seas. It can also strengthen itself and physically travel across the universe. Although all the methods of cultivation have been lost, with the unique creativity and unremitting efforts of mankind, many methods of cultivation have been discovered again. The Alliance has embarked on the path of national evolution, practicing martial arts, magic technology, and hundreds of schools of thought contending, returning to the ancient times. Old view. At this time, an ancient soul unexpectedly merged with the current boy. Then, the truth is revealed. I recommend Ye Shui's original cultivation of immortality. In the 666th year of the Alliance, a nearly broken server was excavated. After years of painstaking efforts to crack it, I learned that in ancient times, humans were the most powerful creatures in the universe. They could fly into the sky and escape from the earth, overwhelming mountains and seas. It can also strengthen itself and physically travel across the universe. Although all the methods of cultivation have been lost, with the unique creativity and unremitting efforts of mankind, many methods of cultivation have been discovered again. The Alliance has embarked on the path of national evolution, practicing martial arts, magic technology, and hundreds of schools of thought contending, returning to the ancient times. Old view. At this time, an ancient soul unexpectedly merged with the current boy. Then, the truth is revealed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Siahua. Chapter 441. At this time, the temperature difference on the holiday night becomes larger, with cold in the morning and warm sunshine in the afternoon. The sound of wheels rolling on the road is the most familiar imprint of the city on the eardrums. Zhou Shuling fiddled with her long hair that was still wet, even though she had been thinking about it since she was preparing to open the store. I am busy, and now I look much better than when I was pushing the breakfast cart. My soft cheeks are white and rosy. It is the lotus that reflects the sun from a distance, it is pink with the sun shining through it. When I look closer, it is white. Snow white. Zhou Dongdong pulled Lu Chang'an's little finger, and dangled his other hand restlessly. He sang 2 lines of children's songs without a tune, read half an ancient poem, and ask stupid questions, which was very suitable for her temperament. Not far away, Du Fujiang Pavilion stands on the river bank, as if it reflects the poetic temperament of Lushan Academy with blue tiles and white walls on the other side. Zhou Shuling touched Zhou Dongdong's hair and said in her mother's unique gentle tone, "Dongdong, my mother taught me you have a poem by Du Fu, a great poet of the Tang dynasty. The sun sets over the mountains, and the yellow river flows into the sea. If you want to see 1,000 miles away, go to the next level. The sun is over the mountains, the yellow river. Mom, my lighter is gone." Zhou Dongdong took out the pocket of his clothes with a pig embroidered on it and was shocked. Zhou Shuling glared at Zhou Dongdong angrily. In fact, Zhou Shuling had taught her this poem a long time ago. It was obvious that Zhou Dongdong was not very impressed. Zhou Shuling was planning to use the time while walking to the store to let Zhou Dongdong recall this poem that every family in the country has taught their children in preschool. However, she found that Lu Chang'an was looking at Zhou Dongdong with the same eyes as she was looking at Zhou Dongdong. Holding her. What's wrong? Zhou Shuling felt a little guilty. After all, the person next to her was so powerful that it was easy for him to pick on her when it came to learning to read. This is Wang Zhiwen's poem. The name Wang Zhiwen, I just missed it when I saw Du Fujianga, he Zhou Shuling smiled sheepishly. The name Wang Zhiwen is relatively uncommon, and it is easy for most people to remember it wrong. It should be considered human nature. How do you understand this poem? Lu Chang'an asked. How do you understand? Zhou Shuling scratched her hair, feeling a little proud that such a question could not trouble her. It means that if you want to see higher and farther, you have to stand higher. Experience this poem from a different perspective. Zhou Shuling pouted and looked at Lu Chang'an. Wasn't she deliberately trying to embarrass herself? The wording of this poem is very simple. Although simple may not be the best, but if it can be simple and good, it must be of a very high level. The realm of this poem is extremely high, especially powerful and bold. Sikong 2-14 Poems says that its majesty is to use the outer fibula to fill the true body. It returns to the emptiness and becomes muddy, and accumulates strength to become majestic. It possesses all things and spans the space. It is a desolate oil cloud and a few long winds. It is beyond the appearance, and it is obtained. In its ring. The bandits that hold on are strong and endless. And their boldness is like watching the bandits of flowers, swallowing and swallowing the wilderness. Returning chi from the Tao, the place is wild. The sky is windy and turbulent, the seas and mountains are green. The true power is filled, and everything is around. In front. Zhao Sanchen, and then the Phoenix Emperor. Xiao Si Luao, wash the feet of Fuzang. Lu Chang'an praised, the poet can write such a powerful and bold poem that combines to a very high level, mainly because he was born in a vibrant country. And the era of passion, the era is the ceiling of the realm of literature and art, and what kind of era determines what kind of works. Zhou Shuling looked at Lu Chang'an with admiration. It was obvious that she saw the sun going down by the river when she went upstairs, and she was able to draw out so much from him. Look, if you want to take the Zhou Dongdong test, she won't do it. If I take the test for you, you won't know it either, so we understand each other, the stupid mother and the stupid child, each other. Lu Chang'an laughed. We era, given time, literary, film and television artworks that match the temperament of the new era will bloom like a riot of colors. Everyone should improve their aesthetic taste. You should study with Zhou Dongdong in the future. Don't teach randomly there. Come up with it. Once out of town, you want her to learn blindly from you. Why don't we learn from you together? Zhou Shuling smiled happily, but Lu Chang'an was different. People he interacted with daily would never speak at his level. It was not a big deal, but it always made people feel a kind of life. The feeling of a beautiful and promising future gives people the motivation to improve themselves and work harder to live a better life. As for his habit of scolding herself for being stupid, Zhou Shuling didn't care. She only knew that she was quite smart, but she just seemed a little stupid in front of Lu Chang'an. It was not her fault. Who made him always so powerful? Is it convincing? I don't want to study. Although Zhou Dongdong didn't understand what Brother Chang'an originally said, he grasped the last point and raised his objection. If you don't study, you will just sell rice noodles like your mother, Zhou Shuling said angrily. What's wrong with selling rice noodles? Lu Chang'an was dissatisfied. I feel like I have no future. Who said that? I think it's good. Are we, mother and daughter, going to be selling rice noodles from now on? That was not what I meant. What does that mean? Stop asking, it's so long-winded. Mom, you were scolded again. You get scolded a lot. Mom, have you ever been spanked? No, I'm an adult. Only stupid kids get spanked. Ouch. They were noisy and laughing all the way, and when they arrived at the restaurant, they found Bai Hui and Miao Yingying eating rice noodles. Gao Duai and other classmates who came to the party were not with them anymore. Bai Hui is here, is this your classmate too? Zhou Shuling greeted enthusiastically. The little girl's figure is so well developed now. Zhou Shuling was deeply impressed by Bai Hui, even though the person with the most perfect figure Zhou Shuling had ever seen was Qin Yinan. But Bai Fen's cheeks are somewhat fleshy, and her apple-like muscles are also particularly cute and eye-catching. Nowadays, people come to the store from time to time and ask questions such as whether the two girls we invited to dance at the opening were store employees. Yes, hello, Sister Zhou. Miao Yingying listened to Bai Hui talk about some things about the restaurant and knew that the proprietress's surname was Zhou, but it felt strange to hear that Bai Hui's proprietress was Zhou Shuling and Lu Chang'an was also the boss. Hello, hello, I'll get you some drinks and chicken drumsticks. Zhou Shuling greeted generously and went to the kitchen to get Zhou Dongdong brand chicken drumsticks. This kid is so cute. Miao Yingying looked at the kid Lu Chang'an was holding. The kid always looked like he didn't know what he was thinking about, which was very funny. Her name is Zhou Dongdong, she is a stupid child. Bai Hui started laughing after saying this, because this is how Lu Chang'an introduced Zhou Dongdong. I am witty and brave. Zhou Dongdong came back to his senses. Miao Yingying burst out laughing. Zhou Shuling brought a drink and 2 Zhou Dongdong brand chicken drumsticks. She smiled and said hello twice before going to work, without urging Lu Chang'an, who was standing there with a slightly unhappy expression. Lu Chang'an frowned and looked at Bai Hui. You are a stupid ant. Your brain is full of fat. The zombies won't even lift their skulls when they see you. After one bite of you, they will be infected with the stupid virus and lose their lives. With the temperament of a zombie, I will no longer be able to jump up and down and just dance to learning to meow, and the flesh on my body will fall off while jumping, and I will pick up a maternity skirt and look like a low girl. Lu Chang'an stopped and did not continue. He took Zhou Dongdong to the other side. He took an apron with the restaurant's mark and hung it around his neck. He started to work. Although the restaurant was not full, the number of waiters was indeed a bit short. Bai Hui and Miao Yingying looked at each other, and then stared at Lu Chang'an, who was busy there. Bai Hui blinked his big eyes inexplicably. He suddenly scolded me. He said you were an ant. Miao Yingying was good at grasping the key points. Bai Hui is a little crazy. Although she feels that she is a girl who will always be 18 years old, girls at this age already have a sense of crisis. The most beautiful label of girl in life seems to be ruthlessly taken away by the years. Auntie. It almost makes people want to take out their ID cards to prove themselves. Why did he suddenly scold me? Bai Hui was very aggrieved. Men are all crazy. Miao Yingying didn't know what to say. When they separated at Gao Dui's house in the morning, Lu Chang'an didn't argue with Bai Hui or anything. Forget it, I'll endure the humiliation, my camera is still with him. Bai Hui sniffed and hummed twice, not planning to argue with him anymore, but Bai Hui was convinced that men are all crazy. Gao Dui actually called Lin Xinhua to the party today. Instead of getting along awkwardly, he sneaked away, so he accompanied Miao Yingying to eat rice noodles. Miao Yingying and Bai Hui finished their rice noodles, said hello to Zhou Shuling and left. Lu Chang'an had been helping in the restaurant and went home for a late-night snack with Zhou Shuling and Zhou Dongdong in the evening. As soon as she walked upstairs, Zhou Shuling found that Lu Chang'an's door had opened a crack and light was leaking out. She couldn't help but become nervous. I remember I locked the door for you. Could it be that there was a thief? There's a thief. Zhou Dongdong nervously hugged Lu Chang'an's thigh and shouted, Lu Sin. Lu Sin shook his head and ran up, lying at Lu Chang'an's feet and licking his shoes. Get off! Lu Chang'an waved his hand, and Lu Sin ran back to the kennel. The door was pushed open, and it was Qin Yanan who opened the door. It turns out to be Miss Qin. Dongdong, go home. Zhou Shuling glanced at Lu Chang'an, and quickly lifted Zhou Dongdong aside with great effort. I had something to ask him about. I sent him a message and he never responded. I'm just waiting for him here, Qin Yanan explained with a smile. Look at you, you have this annoying problem, you always don't like to read messages, Zhou Shuling said angrily, and then pulled Zhou Dongdong to look back and walked upstairs. Qin Yanan also smiled slightly and kept looking at Zhou Shuling. Zhou Shuling was a little embarrassed and continued to look back, and quickly dragged Zhou Dongdong up the stairs at a faster pace. Lu Chang'an pointed to the room and motioned for her not to block the door and go in to talk. It seemed that she couldn't wait to come to Shangguan Dandan after resting in the afternoon. Maybe she asked something. Because Xiahua is not used to explaining all the problems in a straightforward manner in the form of instructions, some pitfalls that Xiahua thinks have been filled are often considered to be unfilled. As of now, everyone can pay attention to talk about what pitfalls Xiahua thinks have been filled in. If you haven't filled it out, or tell me what plots and stories you hope to see next, etc., let Xiahua know everyone's expectations. If you haven't read it, you can check it out. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 442. Qin Yanan pulled the door handle and stepped aside a little. Lu Chang'an passed her by. The hair on his chest rose and fell with his body, and a few strands of black hair moved slightly. The fragrance was fragrant. Qin Yanan locked the door with his backhand, pulled it to make sure it was locked, and said, You haven't put the electrical appliances I bought you last time, and you haven't taken out some manuals, accessories, etc. When I wait for you I fiddled with it for a while, and I put the instructions in the drawer under the TV, and I also labeled the spare parts and put them in the storage box. Trouble? Lu Chang'an nodded. Qin Yanan was more meticulous in this regard. Zhou Shuling came to help him clean every day, but Zhou Shuling did not dare to touch the electrical appliances that she did not know how to use easily, just like men generally did not want to help women organize their cosmetics. Actually, I don't have anything urgent to do. I just don't know why, I just want to run over and take a look. Qin Yinan looked sideways at the ground, wearing high-heeled sandals on a long windbreaker hanging on a chair by her wrist. The toes of her shoes were lightly tapping in circles, and her toenails were painted with single-color pink nail polish, which had a soft glow under the light. You think, is Yesijin instigating me? After Qin Yinan finished speaking, she raised her head and stared straight at Lu Chang'an. It seemed that this problem only involved the instigation of others, rather than that she only saw Lu Chang'an in the morning and wanted to see him in the evening, because it was the instigation of others, naturally. It has nothing to do with my own reserve, so the look in his eyes seems to be just a rational discussion and has nothing to do with other emotions. As for whether Yesijin is considered someone else, sometimes it can be someone else's, and sometimes it can be someone else's. This of course depends on Qin Yinan's own mood and needs. Let's put it another way. It can't be said that it was an instigation. It should have been influenced by the emotions in the memories. Lu Chang'an thought for a while. When you were born, your brain should not have any memory loaded in it. Where did Yesijin's memory go? Probably sealed, imprisoned, forbidden to read, and other scientific or unscientific terms, and then you became the Qin Yinan you are now. The strong individual consciousness still continues to prevent you from reading these memories. Now you are beginning to slowly accept that you once existed. For a memory that has no impression, the brain will probably start to read those past memories intentionally or unintentionally. Of course, memories have emotions, and emotions will naturally affect your behavior. Memories without emotions are just recorded stories. The reason why people cherish memories is, after all, because humans are animals dominated by emotions. Then these memories will have more and more influence on me in the future. What should I do? Qin Yinan watched Lu Chang'an sit down. She was still standing, but her voice was not loud and she looked a little gentle and shy, as if the breeze outside the balcony was blowing through the sycamore trees. Yes, whisper. You want to say what you will become. It's really hard for me to say. It's probably a person whose personality has changed. Just like when you think about some embarrassing things in your childhood, you will also wonder what you did at that time. Would you be so stupid? But you won't think that it's someone else's business, it's none of your business, and you'll still think about feeling hot, embarrassed, etc. Lu Chang'an smiled and waved his hand. Don't think too much about this kind of problem, let it go. There was nothing embarrassing about me when I was a child, nor was I stupid. Zhu Huntang often did embarrassing things stupidly. Qin Yinan felt that how could an elegant, charming, and quiet woman be associated with anything embarrassing? Just like men always ask their girlfriends if they have practiced judo, girls will usually deny it instead of saying that they do it occasionally. As expected, Zhu Huntang must have been a fairy since she was a child. Such a personality and temper are difficult to cultivate, right? Lu Chang'an thought of Zhu Huntang and turned to look out the window. Beilong Center could not be seen in the living room. Taiwan will also have some activities during the National Day on the mainland, but it is not a legal holiday. Zhu Huntang probably does not need to rush back to Taiwan. But what I'm worried about now is whether Yesijin's feelings for you will affect me. Qin Yinan curled up the hair on her chest with her fingers and sighed softly, because she now understood. When Lu Chang'an asked her to touch the coffin, she did not tell Lu Chang'an that the obsession she felt Yesijin had for someone was not simple family affection. She also dreamed of Yesijin having sex with someone, and now she naturally knew who that person was. What do you think? Lu Chang'an asked, staring into her eyes. Qin Yinan gradually showed a shy look, then turned his head and bit his lips. Maybe a little bit, but I am a more rational person after all. I am not a woman like Sunangziu. Even if it was a mistake at the beginning, how can I make the same mistake again and again? Qin Yinan raised her head as if she had made up her mind. She clasped her hands in front of her chest to prevent him from thinking that she was trying to take advantage of Ye Sijin's lingering influence to possess his feelings. She was not that kind of person. Lu Chang'an said he understood. Let's just deal with it like this for now. The past is the past and the present is the present. It's best to be able to distinguish clearly, but no matter what kind of feelings it is not something that is clearly defined and has rules and regulations. Everyone now understands how to grasp the appropriateness. I didn't see Shang Guandandan today. When I knocked on the door, she ignored me. Qin Yinan was a little confused. She obviously felt that Shang Guandandan was much closer to her than to Sunangziu, and she also felt good about Shang Guandandan. This should show that Shang Guandandan does not regard herself as a daughter, otherwise how could he treat his daughter like this? This made Qin Yinan breathe a sigh of relief. Whether it was a mother over 2,000 years old or a mother who looked 14 or 15 years old, it was quite embarrassing. This is normal. Sometimes she is sleeping, sometimes she is reading novels, and sometimes she just doesn't want to come out. Lu Chang'an was not surprised. Let's talk about it next time. I'm really curious about what Sunangziu will do next. She seems to be at a disadvantage, but people like her will definitely not be willing to accept it, but so far she has made no movement. Qin Yinan still cares about Sunangziu. Don't look at it. Shang Guandandan seems to be able to suppress Sunangziu, but what makes Sunangziu great is that she has insidious ideas and the ability to execute them. For example, the two modified people who were shot to death by Lu Chang'an that night, for example, as the third wife, Qin Yinan knew that Sunangziu had a doctorate in both pharmacology and pathology. An ordinary person married such a daughter-in-law. If the daughter-in-law, if you feel murderous, just wait for a normal death. How could she be so impatient at her age? Lu Chang'an stood up and looked at the door. Qin Yinan also noticed the movement of the door. Someone pushed gently outside the door. Outside the door, Zhou Shuling was carrying a large basin of sliced braised beef. She walked upstairs again while muttering, I wanted to give them some supper, so why did I lock the door? I'm going to leave, so that no one will think too much. Qin Yinan was a little helpless. The little daughter-in-law upstairs may not have any thoughts about Lu Chang'an, but she likes gossip too much. Lu Chang'an nodded and saw a video chat invitation interface pop up on the phone placed on the coffee table. Lu Chang'an quickly picked up his phone, picked up Qin Yinan, and jumped out from the balcony. Qin Yinan was baffled, but she had been held by him like this many times, but she didn't rush. She hugged his neck out of habit, then bit her lips and looked at him without saying a word, letting him do what he did. At this time, there were not many people around Lu Chang'an's community. Lu Chang'an hugged Qin Yinan and jumped a few times before arriving at an alley not far from the community. He let her down and pulled her for a few steps to the brightly lit street. Why did it take so long to answer the call? Lu Chang'an had just connected to the video when An Nuan's angry voice came. I just sent Teacher Qin out. Teacher Qin asked me for something. We have finished talking, and now we are sending her back. Lu Chang'an summarized it, and that was probably what happened. An Nuan instinctively looked at the time, frowned, then let go, smiled, and said to Lu Chang'an, I want to say hello to Teacher Qin. Lu Chang'an was a little confused. It would be fine if he didn't show any jealousy and rushed back all night, but he actually said hello to Qin Yinan? He turned the phone away and faced Qin Yinan. An Nuan said he wanted to say hello to you. Hi, An Nuan, did you enjoy your trip? Qin Yinan couldn't help but leaned a little closer, showed a gentle smile, and waved to An Nuan on the screen. It's okay, Teacher Qin, how did you know that I was traveling? An Nuan's smile was similar, but more enthusiastic. Lu Chang'an said that he would tell me after you left. Qin Yinan's smile became wider. Lu Chang'an sighed, what are you doing? Actually, I don't want to travel. I took a flight at 6 a.m. on the 1st, and he stayed at my house until 4 or 5 o'clock before leaving. He didn't come to play with me. I'm bored to death now. And Nuan's cheeks smiled slightly. Hong, this old vixen has forced me to give up my reserve. Lu Chang'an will tell you immediately when I leave. It's really a shame. At most, if you ask, he will just say this casually. Then you should come back early. Qin Yan'an stopped, but it is not convenient to ask Lu Chang'an now. It seems that it is not convenient to ask anytime. I have to test it some other time. No, there is no need to test it. If An Nuan really has a relationship with Lu Chang'an, she would not imply that Lu Chang'an would stay at her house until 4 or 5 o'clock. Qin Yan'an also didn't want to overly stimulate An Nuan. As for asking her to come back early, An Nuan would understand that if she didn't come back early to guard her Lu Chang'an, others would take advantage of her. That was An Nuan's own business. Well, Qin Yan'an herself didn't mean this. She just regarded Lu Chang'an as her brother. Teacher Qin, your lip color is so beautiful. Can you tell me the shade of your lipstick? And Nuan seemed to suddenly realize it. Yang Shuling Clarinet 401, this color may not be suitable for you. It's a bit too mature. Qin Yan'an brushed the hair on her chest and suggested seriously, it just looks lighter on the screen. So that's it? I have 406, 411, 412, and 410. In fact, I prefer 413, but this color is also more mature and my mother likes to use it. And Nuan pouted, I use 410, a pink girly color. Looking at your hotel, it seems to be the magnificent one in Sanya. Qin Yan'an paid attention to the background in An Nuan's video. Yes, I really shouldn't be here on National Day, but my grandparents and my mother don't dare to take a long flight. Besides, I helped Lu Chang'an pray to the Bodhisattva of Nanshan Temple during the Dragon Boat Festival, and now I have to come to fulfill my wish. And Nuan also felt that it's time to stop and plan to end the topic with Qin Yan'an. So did you go to the duty-free shop today? Let me recommend a designer brand to you, which is specially designed for Asian women. I am envious every time I go there, but they usually don't have my size. Qin Yan'an smiled slightly and said, for a 25-year-old woman to show off that she is a girl in front of others, this is really vicious, and is no different from murder. And Nuan's expression changed slightly. She turned to look at the balcony, and suddenly shouted, oops, when I was playing in the water sports today, I didn't pay attention and got my bag wet. My real estate certificate was also wet. I just put it on. It was hanging on the balcony and gone. Why do you bring a real estate certificate when traveling? Qin Yan'an was stunned for a moment. It belongs to Lu Chang'an's family. After he gave it to me, I kept putting it in my bag and forgetting to take it out, and Nuan said in a hurry, I won't tell you anymore. I'm going to find the real estate certificate first. After saying that, and Nuan looked at Qin Yan'an's expression seriously, then took a few screenshots seriously, and then hung up the video. Qin Yan'an turned around and looked at Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an was a man who never knew what panic meant, but he also felt that if he had been another man, he might have died by now. Qin Yan'an patted Lu Chang'an's cell phone on his hand, took out his house keys from his bag, and patted his cell phone with an expressionless face. What are you doing? Lu Chang'an looked at Qin Yan'an's look when the little hen returned to the nest and found that her half-hatched egg was missing. I asked you for a key, so you gave her the real estate certificate. Qin Yan'an held her hands in front of her chest, nodded, stepped on her heels, bit her lips, stretched out her hand and pulled the hair at the corner of her mouth. She used to. I just feel that An Nuan is a girl who likes to provoke people. Now I feel that she is a born master of palace fighting. These words are tit for tat and hidden behind the scenes. Qin Yan'an has been tricked by her even if she is not careful. Give it. Qin Yan'an glared at Lu Chang'an angrily, took a few steps forward angrily, ran back, stared at Lu Chang'an fiercely, and took the key back from his hand. If he just returned the key like this, doesn't that mean that he was completely frustrated by An Nuan? Qin Yan'an is not the kind of person who gives up easily. More than 100 years ago, when he was a child, he would stay up without rest or food just to wait for his brother. What does this mean now? En Nuan, there is a long way to go, please give me your advice. A big chapter came out of my illness, please give me a monthly pass. Let's talk about this one. I recommend a gay book called The Story of a Policeman. This is a story about a protagonist who works as a policeman in the Hong Kong movie world. Starting from the patrol uniform, fighting side by side with Chen Jiazhu, secretly fighting with Lu Jianming, and competing with Li Wenbin for the title of first brother. This book is also called Gay Guy's Story, which is very sexy.